Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 6, 2023 Lower Frederick Township Board of Supervisors General Meeting. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody who is on the roll call on the agenda is present, with the exception of Chief Maxey. He is not able to attend the meeting this evening. Announcements. Township meetings are recorded for the purpose of preparing the minutes, and the recording is destroyed after the minutes are approved. The meeting will be posted online on the Township YouTube channel. The link can be found on the Board of Supervisors page on the Township website. It is requested that all persons wishing to speak before the board shall state their name, address, and business of the board. And the subject matter upon which they wish to speak for the record. In the interest of facilitating the business of the board, all persons addressing the board shall be limited to 3 minutes, unless such time is extended by the chair for good cause. Individuals are requested to remain in their seats and to respect when other persons are speaking. The Board of Supervisors will provide a reasonable opportunity for citizens to comment on any non-agenda items after all agenda items have been addressed, but prior to the adjournment of the public meeting. And we had an executive session just prior to this meeting to discuss a personnel matter. All right, first matter is administrative actions. We have 3 sets of minutes to approve. Is it okay with the board if we approve them all together? Are there any changes anyone would like to make that they haven't already? No? All right, then could I have a motion to approve the minutes for February 28th, March 7th, and March 28th, all of this year?
Chuck Geiser will make the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Sure, I'll second. Sorry, Bert.
Okay, so Supervisor Geiser made the motion and Supervisor Byrd made the second to approve the 3 sets of minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Treasurer's report?
Okay, so I wanted to lead with the treasurer's report that we did receive notification that we did receive the 2040 Monco grant for the Spring Mount sidewalk project. I've not received paperwork yet from the county, so when I do, there'll be a follow-up. So hopefully we get that within the next few weeks or maybe months, as I've heard sometimes with. But I wanted to lead with that.
And sorry, if I can just provide some details on that for the public. The board's been trying for many years to provide a connection from the townhouse community up to Foy Park and the Perkiomen Trail. So this would be the first step of that, and it's a $200,000 grant we just received from the county to build a sidewalk and repair the culvert. So that would be between the township building and the firehouse.
Okay. So overall, the general fund revenue, we're at $1.404 million, $103,477 over budget. We're down 0.1% from last year. Total expenses through May 31st, we're at $897,006, $45,631 under budget. We're down 2.5% from 2022. The net income as of May 31st is $507,929. The township's budgeted net income is $358,822. Our performance is surpassing our budget by 41.6%. Overall, revenue is surpassing budget mostly for real estate, EIT, real estate transfer, and interest from banking. In most other line items, revenue is either on budget or slightly below budget. The township is under or close to budget this year for most line items on our expense side. Overages exist primarily with salaries, which seem to be more of a timing of payroll, health insurance, zoning, and vehicle repair. 2020 and 2021 sewer labor was transferred in May. That total was $119,921.85. Overall, the township's performance is up 4.3% from 2022. The sewer fund, as I just noted, the labor due to the general fund was paid in May. We also received the final installment from our insurance carrier for Hurricane Ida damage. That was in a total of $134,169.87. This includes the generator we've not yet paid for. All other monies would be reimbursing prior expenses. So that's a good thing for the sewer fund. Revenue overall is nearly $332,114 over budget, with $274,658 consisting of the FEMA insurance payments that we've received this year. The fund is at or below most expense items. Engineering and chemical supplies are over budget through May. The net income is $351,459. The net income through last year in May was negative $632. Liquid fuels is pretty much as it's been the last 3 months. There's been no change other than interest. So currently we're $12,799 over our net income budget. The open space fund, no payments have been made out of the open space other than for EIT commission. This fund is not budgeted. The current net income is $50,450. Total available dollars with current allocation for property is $132,265.19. The ARPA COVID relief fund, no payments have been made out of the ARPA COVID relief fund this year. This fund was also not budgeted. The net income is currently $9,476. The total available dollars with current allocation is $397,065.50. So what I did is I backed out the sidewalk project that the board authorized to utilize ARPA funds. So are there any questions regarding the treasurer's report?
I don't have
No questions. Go ahead, Bob.
Bob Burns, Supervisor Road. Jason, what was the number you said was the repayment from the sewer fund to the general? I think you said 119.
So for 2021 and 2020 years, it's $119,921.85.
Because I think earlier you were talking about like close to 160,000 being moved over. So it's
Well,
changed.
this is, we've not moved to 2022. So this is just for 2020 and 2021. We want to see how the fund continues to perform before we make that transfer.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there are no other questions on the treasurer's report, we'll now move to payment of bills. So we have bills in the general fund in the amount of $136,968.81, in the sewer fund, $48,215.63, and in the sewer capital fund, $18,727.15. Any questions from the board? Nope. Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the payment of the bills and pay them? All right, I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Danworth.
Thank you. So Supervisor Hexter made the motions, Supervisor Orff made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Professional and staff reports, engineer report. Carol?
Thank you. The Goshen Hoppen watershed sewage planning study appears later on the agenda, so I won't address that further in my report. Fulmer and Riverside sewer collection system extension. The pump station building is in place. PECO will be bringing electricity to the site shortly. We're still negotiating the paving change order with Dolby. Foy Park bank stabilization, the application and submission are on their way to the County Conservation District for review. Zieglerville Road drainage and Coble Park enhancements, both projects are awaiting further design by my office. The Prestige development, also known as the Shockey Tract or Farmview Estates.
This meeting is being recorded.
they get that, we need to review the final stormwater management from them. The Melbourne Hill project, similar situation. We recently issued a review of the revised development plan set. They're also awaiting Conservation District approval, and we are awaiting receipt of final stormwater management design. The Loctite project site work is underway. The Lechmar project, final plans were reviewed and accepted. It's my understanding the solicitor is developing the applicable agreements for this project, so we'll see that shortly. Over at Arcadia Station, the developer is working from a punch list of items towards closing that development. They have retained a traffic engineer who is evaluating concerns with the crosswalk paving profile on Ziegler Road. There are a number of single-family homes currently under construction in the township. These are at 118 Colonial Drive, a Rotelli home at 3rd Avenue, the Mancini property on 2nd Avenue, which is quite far along, and 26 2nd Avenue, also moving along with construction of the new home. Formerly 297, now 36 Smith Road, we're awaiting resubmission of plans and calculations to address comments from the last review. 46 Pratt's Road, the grading and stormwater management plan associated with that project were approved in October. The project still requires execution of the O&M agreement for issuance of a grading and stormwater permit. And lastly is the Sandbrook subdivision on Alexander Drive. We are still awaiting submission from the applicant's engineer to address the driveway concern on lot 2. As well, the items from our report this evening.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? I have a question. I've noticed that there are still some dead trees, or maybe some trees have died at the Arcadia Station development. Is that on your punch list?
Absolutely,
Some of them are on the street and some of them are in the development.
yes.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the public? Okay, solicitor report?
Nothing.
Great, okay. I'm sure we'll hear from you later. All right, township staff reports. Our police chief is not here. Do you have the report?
I do. So I did want to add to the calls for service. I did receive an email from Corporal Milligan. So calls for service for May of 2023 was 513. Their total year-to-date was 1,897. Traffic citations were at 50, with 232 year-to-date. Since January 1st, the police department is averaging more calls for service month-to-month than the same time period in the calendar year 2022. We're working through the cost analysis for the school resource officer program. Several officers are scheduled for training seminars during the month of June, details of which will be provided at the next public meeting. Several news releases are enclosed for incidents in which arrests were conducted for various offenses, and the 911 service overview has been provided by PIMA for the township website. That's what I have for the police report. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say.
And also,
So I'm looking at you.
sorry, I also wanted to announce that Chief Maxey has submitted his retirement paperwork, effective September 22nd in person, but not, it would be through March 6th of next year. We're still working through particulars on what that's going to mean for the police department. We didn't have any real more to add on that situation.
Yeah, and for those of you who know Chief Maxey, and I'm hoping he'll be here at our next meeting to speak, he has 30 years of service as a police officer, and I think he's looking to
Start a new
do
chapter.
yeah, thank you. Start a new chapter. So, more details to follow on that. So you may have surmised that the personnel issue we were discussing before this meeting was exactly this. And so just to ask the board, it typically takes us about 6 months to hire a new police officer. And Would the board like to start that process sooner rather than later?
Yes, that would make sense.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, so, Peter, we need to modify the agenda?
Need to do a vote to modify the agenda, and then you need to do a vote regarding starting the hiring process.
Thank you. So again, this is per the revision to the Sunshine Act that occurred in the summer of 2021. If you want to discuss something that is not on the agenda, that has been published at least 24 hours in advance of the meeting, you need to vote to add that item to the agenda, and then you can vote on that item, and the amended agenda will be posted the next day on the website. So do I have a motion to amend tonight's agenda to add the item to advertise for a new police officer? Is that? Okay, great.
I'll make that motion, Dan.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Chuck Yeiser will second.
All right, so we had Supervisor Orff made the motion, Supervisor Yeiser made the second to modify the agenda to add this item. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. So now, the next item would be to vote to advertise to hire a new police officer for Lower Frederick. Do I have a motion for that? All right, I will
Yep.
make that motion. Do I have a second?
Chuck Yeiser will second.
All right, so Supervisor Hexter made the motion, Supervisor Yeiser made the second, and that would be to authorize advertising for a police officer. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Fire company? I think I saw. There you are. Hiding in the back.
Hello. For the month of May, there were 12 calls that we responded to, 5 of which were in Lower Frederick. Just some updates. Yes, the burn ban is back in place because we haven't had any rain. If you managed to sneak in the last 5 minutes, you noticed a massive smoke cloud has moved in from our friends up in Canada. That's where I ran off to. We're getting a bunch of calls now for smoke in the area. It's very hazy. It smells like burning outside. But it's basically taking over the entire area from Lehigh Valley, just pushing towards our friends in Philly right now. So, and then our steak night fundraiser is coming up. Tickets are going on sale Thursday, June 22nd at the firehouse. Any questions?
I have a question that I've heard from some residents. So does the burn ban also include fire pits?
I would have to check with Tom, but
Okay.
I believe it does.
Okay.
We try to keep the Shrikesville and Lower Frederick stuff pretty much in line since we cover both municipalities. I know Shrikesville Borough is everything.
Okay.
Except grills.
And that would mean everything like barbecuing or,
No, so grills is fine.
Okay.
But fire pits, a stone-made smoke ring, all that stuff is typically covered by the burn ban.
okay, great, thank you.
But I can get clarification.
Yeah, it might be helpful if this goes on much longer to maybe put some more details so people know exactly what is okay and what is not.
Yeah, we can get you guys stuff to post on Facebook.
Any questions from the board?
No.
From the public? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, ambulance report?
I didn't get anything back this month.
Okay, Public Works?
Okay, so for the month of May, we did 6 sump pump inspections, continued mowing of township properties, they started last month, road checks and cleanup, yearly preventive maintenance performed on the backhoe, pulled back some more roads. They did start the roadside mowing, worked on the Delphi pump station for the generator installation, and supported the Park and Recreation Board's native plant event.
All right, so we're saving the good stuff for first, huh? A zoning amendment, omnibus ordinance, part 2.
Now you can speak.
Yes, you'll be on for a little while.
Well, yeah, we'll see. You have in front of you the latest version of the ordinance. It does
I did add a section in regards to the planning commission's, review, discussion on the neighborhood lotting in the, R1 zoning district. I've also added, some other changes that the the planning commission recommended, as well as, didn't add some changes that they recommended that I, stated that I didn't agree with. Really, it's in front of the five of you to kind of decide if this is the way you want to proceed, either with what the planning commission recommended, what I recommend, something else, or nothing at all. We're at a point where I think, at least I need direction from the five of you, so we can finalize it. And if you're fine with that finalized version, then we can start a process of sending it back to the township and county planning commissions. Once they review, then advertise for possible adoption. If you want, I can go through and kind of highlight the various points where I kind of need decisions from the board, and kind of skip over the things that I don't believe are an issue. That being said, if any of the five of you, if I don't raise something that you have a question about, obviously, please do.
Sorry, is that acceptable to proceed that way?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
So, just to, and for the audience's sake, I'll also cover some of the changes briefly. We're changing the definition of building coverage to exclude things like decks, cornices, eaves, gutters, which is very common, and hopefully it'll allow a little more flexibility of people doing work on at their homes. I revised some language regarding calculating of a maximum track density. Nothing is being changed. I just revised the language because I found the current language quite confusing and nebulous. So the first big issue has to do with R1 zoning. There's been discussions on whether or not to continue allowing neighborhood lotting within the R1 zone. The Planning Commission and the Township Planning Commission, as well as with help from John at Montgomery County, looked into this, I think, 2 or 3 meetings, and have decided that they would like, or they're recommending that R1, that neighborhood lighting be allowed in the R1 zoning district, basically in areas that are a quarter mile or within a quarter mile of what's called the township, I think it's growth boundary, or no, that's not the exact term, I'm sorry.
Growth area.
Growth area.
Future growth area.
That's it. And so that was the recommendation. Basically, the future growth, that boundary is the boundary line of the R2 zoning districts and some of the other higher density residential zoning districts. So that's the recommendation of the Planning Commission. I have no problem with that recommendation. I've just kind of altered the language a little bit. Instead of basically saying, well, here is the future growth area boundary line, measure a quarter mile off of that, and then you can build within that area. My recommendation is we make a map showing that quarter mile. And that's, we make it basically an overlay. Within that quarter mile area, you can do neighborhood lotting. Outside of that, generally, you cannot.
Sorry, when you say generally, you mean you cannot?
Well, you could, I'd say generally, because you could have a property that is bisected by that line, and if you have the open space of the neighborhood lotting outside the quarter mile line, that is fine, as long as the development, the actual residential development, is within that quarter mile. That's another recommendation I made, that we should have all of the actual residential building within that quarter mile. You don't want a developer playing games where they have a little finger of land within the quarter mile, and the actual development is a half mile away. You know, one of the primary reasons why this was suggested was to prevent the extension of our septic sewer system, you know, far into the R1 zoning district. So we want to keep the houses that are getting using the sewer system as close to that future growth boundary line as possible. But you could still, as it's written now, you could put all your development area within that quarter mile, and then the 75% open space could be without that quarter mile. And it would all be one development, and that the area outside the quarter mile that's open space would be used to meet those requirements. So that's the way the ordinance is currently written. I believe Carol certainly could put together a map showing the actual boundary line that we can then attach to the zoning ordinance, so we make it quite clear. If you're within this boundary line, you're good. If you're without, you're bad. And we don't have arguments over how to measure a quarter mile. It's just a little more tried and true. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want to have discussions on each of these points as we stop?
I have a question.
I guess I can allow that.
So remind me again how this is different from what the planning commission had recommended? Because they had a map too.
My understanding, I was not at the planning commission meeting. I've looked at the minutes of the planning commission meeting. The way I understood their recommendation was they plotted out the future growth boundary line and then said, okay, if you're within a quarter mile of that growth boundary line, you're allowed to do neighborhood lotting. That's what they said. What I'm saying is we're going to attach a map that shows that quarter mile, not the growth boundary line, but the line that's a quarter mile from it. And say, if you have 10 acres that's within this quarter mile, buffer area, and all of the actual residential housing, not the estate lots, but all the development lots are within this buffer area, this quarter mile area, then you're allowed to do a neighborhood lotting within the R1.
So the line could essentially bisect the property.
Yes.
And I thought
But that's something, if that's something the board doesn't like, we then could adjust that line not to bisect properties.
Yeah, I thought we were trying to follow property lines, but I'm going to put our engineer on the spot. Do you remember what the recommendation, is Peter accurate in the way he stated the planning commission's recommendation?
Well, we have other planning commission members here, so they can
Oh.
predict us if we don't remember that the way they do.
Yeah.
My understanding was that when the county planner tried to create maps that showed this offset, and they were not consistent with property lines, there was some frustration about that and how that would be interpreted. And what I heard from the planning commission is we should let the developer prove to us that they're within the quarter mile, and at least 10 acres of their property are within the quarter mile. Make them show us the map that proves that, rather than the township creating a secondary map other than the one that shows the growth area. Now, you can see if everybody remembers it the way I did or not.
I agree with that.
I see Phil.
Warren,
has
go
his hand
ahead.
up, too.
Warren was first.
I'm just thinking here that it might be a good idea if the Board of Supervisors could make it so Peter can come to some of these planning commission meetings, because this was all discussed in detail about how to go about changing the line and stuff, and Peter sounds like he's reinventing that wheel.
Warren Jacobs, Fulmer Road.
That's right.
For those watching from home, go ahead, Phil. And can you come forward, please, because you don't have quite as loud a voice as Warren.
Phil Smith, 2 of Girl, PC secretary. I concur with what Carol had presented as what was discussed and recommended by the planning commission, and that was to shift the onus of responsibility to an applicant who wants to be able to develop within a quarter-mile area. So that was the basis in which we made our recommendation for, the adjustment to the zoning ordinance.
So, Mr. Smith,
Yes.
and Carol, so is my reading correct that we are leaving it up to the developer to measure that quarter mile from the boundary, or are we setting that mile boundary?
So the discussion concluded, as I recall, with leaving it to the developer to prove that they've got at least 10 acres of land that is within a quarter mile of that boundary. And the challenge was, again, when you offset that, you weren't following property lines, you were in outer space. So to put that on a map and have that easy to interpret from a map made by the township, just with an offset, really was not as helpful as saying, Mr. Developer, you've got a surveyor, you show me you've got 10 acres within this within a quarter mile of this boundary.
Okay, thank you.
That's accurate, yes.
So just to back up to what you were saying, so you have to have at least 10 acres within the quarter mile, but then you have to have theoretically, you could also have additional acres outside
Correct.
the boundary, as long as that's the open space.
Correct.
Okay, but at least 10 acres for residential building.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so how does that affect what you've written here if we go with the planning commission definition, or?
I can tweak the language. Whatever Carol feels is, in my mind, I'd rather us draw the line, because I think if we have the developer drawing the line, we're gonna get into arguments over, well, are they really showing measuring it a quarter mile, or, if you go around a bend, how does that quarter mile work? I think, in my mind, if we draw the line is what the line is. We're not arguing over. Maybe we're having arguments over what land is on what side of that line, but we're gonna have that argument if the developer draws the line also. I'm just trying to get rid of one of the variables. That being said, this is not a big deal to me. If the planning commission likes it this way, if Carol thinks it works better this way, I'm fine. I can write the ordinance so that is the way the planning commission recommended.
Well, I think, having attended the meetings, I think the reason why it ended up where it is now is because the line drawing exercise was not really yielding a result easily. So they kind of fell back and said, hey, we already have lines drawn for this future growth, so let's, pass that on. I think that's why we ended up where we are.
Which is fine. That works for me.
Yeah. Is that, yeah, okay. I stated it correctly. Diane's got it.
Go ahead, Diane.
Hi, Diane Jurin, 9 Zieglerville Road. I agree with Warren that we really need our solicitor to be able to attend these meetings. I don't think it's going to cost us any more money if he attends the meetings and he hears and interprets and writes the ordinance the first time the way our commissions have decided for it to be written. This is not the first time that I've heard Mr. Nelson interpret something differently than what I heard the commission say. So if you can please in the future make sure he attends, I think that will serve all of us very good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, should we ready to move on to the next item?
Well, I guess we have to decide whether we're okay with what the planning commission recommends as opposed to what Peter said.
Yeah, well, it says as shown on the appendix, so there will be no appendix because there will be no map.
No, there will be.
There will be a map.
There
Yeah.
will be a map. It's just a different map that the developer will then be measuring off of.
Okay.
Instead of measuring to.
Okay, so it's really just the map.
In some ways, it is just a map,
Yeah.
yes.
So the language is applicable regardless of map.
I think basically, what the language would be, would be, instead of, I say located within.
You gotta
blah, blah,
change it to
blah,
quarter mile.
It would say located within a quarter mile of, blah,
Right,
blah, blah.
okay. So to implement the PC's version of it, he has to modify a couple words in here to say quarter
Right,
mile. Yeah.
gotcha.
Is that okay with the group? Terry,
Yeah, it's all right with me.
do you need a vote or
No, that
consensus
works.
is good?
Yeah, we
Okay.
don't need, yeah.
Wonderful.
Regarding density dimensional standards in the R1, there's been, previously, the planning commission had some issue with me deleting some references to basically the environmental factors, section 41 of the zoning ordinance. I generally don't like having specific references in ordinances, because invariably things get changed, they go stale, they are bad references, and they, when we then have a legal challenge, it's very hard to deal with. So I generally, unless they really need to be in there, or someone really insists on them being in there, I try to get rid of them. So that was the initial reason why I did this here. I also felt that these references, section 41 only deals with subdivision and land developments. However, these dimensional standards deal with single lots that are being developed. So it becomes kind of confusing, and someone, wouldn't surprise me for a lawyer, if necessary, to go in and use that confusion or use to try to get his or her client something they don't deserve. And we end up fighting over something that we could have avoided by just leaving the language out. The more language and more type of stuff like this you leave in an ordinance, sometimes some more opportunities, some other attorney can get playful with it. So I deleted that language for those reasons. Generally did not make any substantive changes under, conventional lotting, other than having to do with maximum height regulations. Right now, in our various zoning districts, we have maximum height regulations. We also have other regulations that generally apply across the township in sections 24 and 32, and these regulations conflict. So one of the first things when this ordinance was first being prepared, one of the reasons why I was initially asked to do this was to deal with this conflict. So I have changed the district regulations to match the regulations in section 24 and 32. And the planning commission had some issues with this. I think that there was a misunderstanding of what was being done. I did add, what I don't like to do, I did add specific references to section 24 and 32 to try to address some of the planning commission's concerns and to make it clear what applies to what. Next, we also added, we have no impervious surface coverage requirements in our zoning districts. So we have added those requirements. And for conventional lotting in the R1, it's 15% of the lot area. Minimum lot area is 2 acres. So 15%, you're talking about 13,000 square feet of impervious surface, which I think is a good number. It's not too much, it's not absorbent, but it's certainly going to allow people to fully use their residential lots within the R1 district. Going to neighborhood lotting in the R1 district, currently we have minimum lot size and minimum development area within, not the estate lots, but the smaller lots of neighborhood lotting. Currently they're 10,000 square feet. The planning commission has recommended raising those up to 12,500 square feet. I generally don't have, I have a little bit of issue with this, because the purpose of neighborhood lotting is to basically squeeze the development into a smaller area of land, thus enabling the majority of a development site to remain open space, undisturbed. And so it has two benefits of, one, we preserve this open space, and all the, niceties of that. And it also makes the development a little more cost effective because developers aren't spending so much money on roads and pipes and other things. In a bigger development, they're gonna be stretching them out. That being said, I could see using the neighborhood lotting in the R1 as kind of a transition or a buffer between the higher density development within our growth zone and the lower density, conventional lotting in R1, in the rest of R1. So it's a common zoning practice to kind of step up or step down density as you're going from one area of a township to another. So raising these lots to 12.5 from 10,000 somewhat makes sense. Carol can run the numbers. I did a little bit. I don't think it really would impact the density that these neighborhood lotting could do. They're still, I think for most places, they're gonna be able to set aside the 75% open space and still have more than enough left over to build the maximum density of lots, even if the lots were a minimum size of 12.5. So I don't have an issue with that.
Sorry, just one point of clarification. So for the transitional area, which is between the R1 and the R2, is that considered R1 or R2?
It's gonna be in the R1 zone, but it's basically within that quarter acre,
Quarter mile.
or sorry,
No.
quarter mile.
Right, but my question is, even though it's a transitional, it's
Yeah.
still considered R1?
It's still in the
Okay.
R1 zoning district.
Okay,
But we're allowing since we're allowing the neighborhood lotting, it's a denser housing product. I just see it as kind of a transition. You don't have to look at it that way, but that's just the way I was looking at it. And then along with that, since we're increasing the minimum lot size, I've actually increased the minimum lot width from 75 to 90. This was not something that was discussed at the planning commission, but I think it's something you don't want to get really narrow, long lots. It's better to have kind of not so much square, but bulky rectangular lots are better. So it's something I would recommend. Carol can certainly chime in whether or not she agrees, but that's a change I made. And then lastly, the planning commission recommended keeping the maximum building coverage at 18%. I recommend, and I believe Carol agrees with this, raising it up to 20%. My general feeling is this, it's not gonna have any impact upon density, upon traffic. We're not getting more homes, we're not really using up more land, because still 75% has to be open space. We're not gonna get more stormwater, because all has to be controlled. But I think what it does do is it will provide builders and residents a lot more flexibility on how to develop these lots. The developers, they're gonna be able to give a wider range of housing styles, housing products, which I think is good for our township. At the same time, hopefully they're not gonna be using up every square foot of building coverage, so that when someone buys a home, they're still gonna have the opportunity, if they wanna put in a shed, they wanna put in, a small pool house or something to that effect, they're gonna be able to do that without having to come in and ask for a variance. So, you know, that's my general recommendation. I think we should raise it to 20%. I think that would give a reasonable amount of building coverage on a lot. And, that, you know, that's that. Let me stop here. Oh, well, and then one last thing, we also added impervious surface of 32% on the lot, for this, I believe.
And that's a new thing, we've never had that.
Yeah, we've never had impervious surface limitations. So I'll stop here and see if you have any questions, if you have any comments, concerns.
Just let's have the board ask their questions first, and then we'll get to you. Thanks. I've got a question, sort of a hypothetical question. So we have this transitional area. That transitional area is entitled to do neighborhood lotting, which means they can do public sewer and water. What about the property beyond that? Are they also entitled to public sewer and water?
No, they
Is
shouldn't
that-
be. It should
is-
only be for the smaller lots. And then
Is that
the
in-
estate lots are gonna have to be doing, you know, on-lot waters.
But is that in here anywhere? What's to prevent a developer from coming in and saying, oh, well, this property next to me, they're in the transitional area, they have public sewer and water, I'm beyond that. I also want it because it's just right there.
You're gonna have to give me a second to call up the current ordinance. 'Cause
Okay.
that's not, those requirements are not covered in the omnibus. They're not touched right now. So, hold on.
I don't believe the current ordinance has anything like that in there.
No, but I just remember we got something from the county planner where he was suggesting, we had some options regarding that to encourage on-lot in the R1. I'm just referring to the discussion we had quite a while ago about package plants and,
Yeah, I remember.
yeah, that's what I'm,
And I remember you pointing it out at a meeting.
Well, there's two ways that we deal with this. One is our Act 537 plan, lays out where, you know, where properties are going to be served by our public sewer system or, Schwenksville Borough Authority, and where the properties are not allowed to be served by public centralized sewer, and it has to be on lot. So the Act 537 plan lays that out. That's the purpose, the broad overreaching purpose of that plan. We also have language in the zoning ordinance currently that it doesn't really address. It basically says if you have lots that are over an acre in the R1, they may be served by on-lot water or sewer. It doesn't say they have to be served by on-lot water or sewer. Certainly that's something we could change. But I think the reason why we don't have that now is because of the Act 537 plan controls where those, where that line is. And I believe, if I remember correctly, in discussing the Gentera project, one of the issues I dealt with very early on when I first started representing the township was a question of whether or not Gentera was located within an area that could be public sewer or was too far outside that boundary, so it could not. And the determination was made that obviously that it could be publicly sewer. But literally the next property away from our growth area than Gentera, that would not be able to be publicly sewer under our Act 537 plan. Am I correct with that, Carol? Does that make sense?
Our Act 537 plan is going to be, have to be amended for that watershed in its entirety, even for Gentera to be able to do a connection. Does that make sense? So right now, our Act 537 today says the Scioto Creek watershed will be subject to future planning, which has to go to DEP.
Right.
Gentera is in that Scioto Creek watershed, and they can't do anything until the sewage facilities planning is undertaken for that area.
Correct.
And that's the plan that I anticipate will say this is as far as the sewer goes in this watershed, if that's what township officials.
Right. But in other watersheds elsewhere in the township, the Act by 37 plan does lay out that boundary between what is publicly sewered and what is privately sewered.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So I'm going to reach into my memory banks, and I think what you were referring to is John had written something to address a concern regarding like community sand mounds or something.
Yeah.
I believe that's what it was. And whatever he had, he pulled it from another municipality, and
It
it
goes upper south.
seemed like it covered the bases, but I don't have that text available to me. But, and you had pointed it out at a prior meeting, maybe
Yeah,
a few months ago.
I think he was proposing like the upper Southford solution.
Yeah.
So it was basically a zoning restriction that specifically said, in this area, you must be on lot
Right, like-
individual systems, not any sort of community system,
You-
community sand mound, package treatment plant.
You could have conventional lotting that still wants to use a community mound, right?
Right, yes.
Yeah, I think it was to address that issue.
Okay, that's certainly something we could add if that's something you're looking for.
I just remember the very long discussion we had about what if a developer wants to come in and do a package plant, and we all talked about why we don't want that, that you either have public water and sewer or you have on-lot.
You definitely don't want, unless someone comes in and builds a development that we certainly wouldn't want in the middle of the R1 with several hundred homes. There's a minimum number of homes for these package plants to really operate efficiently. If you have only 40 or 50 homes on a package treatment plant, all of a sudden they're paying, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a quarter to treat their sewage because they just don't have the number of people to operate the plant correctly. The other problem you're running is you have an HOA running the plant and they decide they don't want to do it, and guess what? When the plant goes to Pluie, DEP turns to us and says, you're on the hook.
Yep.
I've seen that in other places. So that's just something, you do want to avoid those package treatment plants as much as possible.
Is that the draft code that you presented where there were priorities on what system you use to treat water, that had sort of a selection list? If you couldn't do A, then you go to B, if you couldn't do B, you go to C.
Might have been.
It's-
Yeah, I've
I'm
actually,
remembering that as you talk about it.
I've written an ordinance in one of my other townships that does just that. Basically, your first option is your conventional, on-lot system, and then a sand mound, and you go down through all the individual systems until you finally get to community on-lot systems, until you then get to,
Yeah.
package treatment plant and holding tank. And the developer or the builder has to prove they literally can't do the, one on the top of the list before they can move on to the next.
I think it would be worthwhile to have that type of language in this.
It could be, yes.
I mean, it certainly would be simpler than starting over with a new ordinance.
I'm
It
sorry.
would be simpler than starting over with a new ordinance if we wanted to do it.
Yes,
just-
yeah.
Yeah. What does the rest of the board think?
Sure.
Yeah, makes sense.
Terry?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
would work.
Okay, all right, well. Do you want to hear what we all think about the other things you said, so we can move on to this last thing, or
Yes,
how do you want to
please.
proceed? Okay.
Just the R1 right now? That's all
Yes.
you covered?
Yeah, if you don't mind, yeah.
So, I think as far as the numbers, the 12,000, two lines at 12,000 square feet, I thought we discussed already that 20, going from 18 to 20 was acceptable.
Yeah, we did.
What we all agreed on, so I believe that's fine.
Yep.
And maximum impervious, I'm fine with 33, 32,
32.
yeah. What, yeah. That's
There,
fine.
there was another number that we went from 33 to 35. Can you refresh my memory on that?
Not off the the top of my head, I'm sorry.
Because those are the two ones. There was 18 and 33, and I think we agreed to go up to 20 and 35. What was that? Do you remember, Carol? Does that ring a bell with you?
We went, no, it was something different.
I thought that's how we ended up going to, that was part of that discussion
Yeah, I don't see,
during the planning commission meeting.
did a quick search in the ordinance. I don't see anything where we're switching from 35 to 32 or vice versa.
Well, the original number was 33%, and we went up to 35.
Yeah, I don't see that. There's a couple places where we had current impervious surface coverage of 35% that we then changed in this ordinance. But nothing where we're changing something to 35% that I see.
Okay.
But getting back to the three items that Terry Bird just mentioned, I think they're acceptable. I've heard them before. They seem to be in line, the 20% in the impervious surface and the 12,500 square feet. I think those are the three we're talking about for R1, right? So.
I'm good.
You good? Move on to the R2. So in the R2,
Sorry, Warren was first. Is your question about the R1?
The question is about the topic we just discussed here.
Okay, go ahead.
On the issue of building coverage, once again, this is a situation where Peter wasn't involved in the discussion. It would have been good if he did, because that discussion carried out over several meetings. Carol even had a little bit of a presentation based on her study of different communities and what they do. And the Planning Commission agonized over this to come up with that decision. It's an opinion situation. There's a line of thinking that if a developer wants to build great big houses, they develop the lot conventionally. If they want to develop it as neighborhood lotting, then they have a reasonable sized house. And yeah, a lot of effort, a lot of debate came into coming up with that compromise. So it seems irritating to me to see Peter just come up and insert his opinion and overrule what the Planning Commission said. I mean, the supervisors certainly can overrule the Planning Commission, but Peter wasn't in on the discussion. The Planning Commission wasted all that time and effort coming up with that compromise.
I'm not overruling anything, Warren, I'm just giving my opinion, that's all.
Well, right, but your opinion, is pretty much, it would have been great if it could have been inserted at the time when they were doing all that work and that wasted all that time.
Understood.
Go ahead, Bob. Is this about the R1?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Bob Burns, Silverville Road. So Peter, you were saying something about the estate lots would remain septic. I mean, the way it was done over at Arcadia, the two estate lots had to be tied in, and that was at DEP's request. And anytime we're having a developer.
They're in the R2 though, wasn't Arcadia in the R2?
Yeah, it is, but I'm just saying, as far as the R1 that you're talking about, the estate lots, if they're in the quarter mile and they're doing neighborhood lotting there, shouldn't those two, or one, however many estate lots are there, shouldn't they be provided with the sanitary as well? I mean, isn't DEP going to throw it back and say, hey, you got to include this?
My comment on these estate lots tonight was more just to kind of, I'm not talking about them.
Right.
Not that I'm making a recommendation either way.
Okay.
you know, if the estate lot is outside of the quarter mile boundary, I think we don't want them to be sewer.
Right.
If they're within the quarter mile boundary and, you know, it makes sense, yeah, that makes sense to me. You know, from my standpoint, it doesn't, it's not a big deal, it just depends on the situation.
Okay.
I wasn't trying to imply one way or the other.
Right. And I also think it's, I brought it up before, if Peter or somebody else from his firm can attend the, you know, the planning commission meetings, it would be definitely helpful.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on to the R2 now? Is that where we
Yeah.
are? Okay.
Yep. So the R2, you know, is basically covering the same dimensional requirements as the R1, except in the R2, I think that both the planning commission and I both agree it should, well, actually, no, sorry. Planning commission and I disagree. Planning commission recommended to raise these minimum lot size and the minimum buildable area to 12,500 square feet, also just like they recommended in the R1. You know, my comment to that is, you know, we might want to keep them to 10,000 square feet, once again, to keep the development more compact. That's just something, you know, the board needs to decide. I think practically speaking, it doesn't have much of an impact one way or the other. Again, in the R2, you're actually setting aside less land as open space, so clearly, if you do raise the minimum lot size of these development lots, there's gonna be more than enough room to build them in most cases.
And sorry to interrupt, but the other thing that I think it's helpful to understand is, just because the minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet, if a builder wants to build on a 15,000 square foot piece of property or 20,000 square foot piece of property, they can have a bigger property.
Correct,
This just means you can't go smaller.
correct,
So they can still build whatever they want.
yes. And then the other issue is the maximum building coverage. So the planning commission, you know, recommended this stayed at 18%. My recommendation, you know, what I'm thinking, having done some math, I was raising it up to 25% for the same reasons I stated it in the R1. It just is not going to have a profound impact upon density, traffic, stormwater, any of that, but it will provide a more, you know, a greater variety of housing stock to the township, which I think, you know, in the long run will be useful for the township. I picked 25% here because if you do the math, this gives the same amount of building coverage on a 10,000 square foot lot as the 20% building coverage on the 12.5 in the R1. So you end up with the same size houses. In the R1, the houses are on slightly bigger lots. And then the maximum impervious surface coverage is 40%. Once again, planning commission wanted only 33% here.
I can start. So for the R2, I actually agree with the planning commission, the majority of the planning commission's recommendations to keep it at the 12.5 for both lot size and buildable area, 20% and 33% for coverage and impervious. Looking at the R3 and 4, which is not part of this, those are at 10,000, so the whole idea of the transitional, I think it should start at the R2 and stay bigger.
So your recommendation is to 12.5, right?
It'd be the
And
exact same as R1, honestly.
20% for coverage and 33% for the impervious.
Yeah. And then get the same size houses on the same size lots.
gears are turning. What's that? So the gears are turning.
Yeah. I mean, looking at it from, so this is fine on paper, R1, R2, all that stuff, but then driving around looking at R2 and R1, where we're talking about these areas, it's not like you drive past a certain point and say, wow, now I'm into a different area. It's all rural, currently farms. I don't know. It's just how I feel.
What are the lot sizes of the homes in Arcadia Station?
They're all
Are they all pretty small?
right around 10.
10,000.
They're all around 10?
10,000.
Mhm. Okay,
Prestige has bigger lots.
yeah,
But
yeah. there's a big
Prestige
one.
are all about 11,000 and bigger.
I'm actually going to concur with Mr. Byrd again. I think is the point that you're not actually, the visual of moving from one area to the next is not going to be that great because you're keeping the, if neighborhood lotting occurs, it'll occur within that quarter mile, which is directly adjacent to, in a lot of cases, the R2. So from a visual impact, I don't think it's going to make, I think it's better to have the larger, the 12.5 lots and a 20% coverage and so forth. It seems to be a logical progression. And we're not talking a tremendous amount of area if you look at the map. So I think it makes sense. So.
Terry, what do you think?
I know we discussed this before about the percentages, and we did change them and said that we wanted to bring them up to 20% from 18, and then went up to the 12.5. And Peter, you were saying moving the one up to 40% of the coverage of the impervious?
for the lot,
Yeah, the lot.
Yeah, for the lot impervious, but obviously if.
I know that's-
If we raise the lot size to 12.5, then that number can come down.
I know that's where we discussed that 33 to 35.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's where it was.
I know, I remembered that.
So you
Yeah,
were right,
that is,
Marla.
yes.
It was over those right there.
Yeah, I think we talked about going from 18 to 20 and then from 33 to 35
Yes.
with a 12,500 square foot lot.
Okay.
So is that
Alright.
okay with the rest of the board?
Gears have stopped turning now. I'm good with the planning commission's recommendation of 12.5, but a deviation of 20% on coverage and the 33% that the planning commission recommended
For impervious surface.
for impervious.
Cool. And that might be really the last big thing.
So going down from the 35% that we discussed a couple months ago.
Yes.
All right.
I think they really labored over that. That I remember the planning commission really laboring over, the 33. So, where do we go?
Okay, R3.
So in the R3, there's been changes, and this has been since the, I think, beginning, when I first started writing the omnibus, even before it was split apart. There have been changes to some minimal lot area, minimal lot width, building coverage, impervious surface coverage. As far as I know, no one's ever questioned or commented on those, so unless the board has issues with them, I would just move forward on those. And the same thing goes with the R4. lastly, you know, once we get into the other zoning districts, I made changes to the height regulations so that there's, you know, it's the same height regulation throughout the township. And they're all written basically the same. But once again, those changes have been in place over several iterations of this ordinance.
Right. Okay. I'm
That's
good
it.
if you want to keep going.
No,
Village commercial.
that is my
Yeah,
review.
all right.
So unless you have any other comments or questions, that's what I was looking for. I guess the only question now would be, you know, I can make these changes and come back to you. I can make these changes, finalize it, and send it off to the planning commissions. It's just how you wish to proceed.
Is it possible to add a section about sewering in the R1?
Yes, I actually have notes to do that, so yes.
So should we see that before we move it on?
Probably be useful, yes.
Okay. So maybe at our work session? Is that okay?
Yeah, I definitely can get it to you before then.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. All right.
Before we move on, are we going to get him the memo? Are we referring now again back to John's memo when you said sewering in the
Well,
R1?
that's part of it, yes.
Okay, good.
I think what Peter was saying was something that said, you know, first do this, and if that doesn't work, then do this, and that doesn't
Right.
work. So we're giving people some guidance on,
Sure.
so they don't
Yeah.
jump from, I can't do on-lot to we're going to sewer it.
I'll look to see if I have a copy of that memo, otherwise I'll reach out to John. I've worked with John in other townships, so I know him.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it was available hard copy at a meeting for those people who weren't on planning commission. But I know I didn't receive it, and I saw it while I came here, so I don't have it.
You know where I think it was? You sent us an email yesterday with about 6 attachments.
Peter
And I
did?
think, yes,
Yeah.
I think that was one of the attachments.
Okay.
Just remembered that.
Actually, I think I sent it to you this afternoon.
Yeah. it
Well,
was
okay,
three-
this afternoon. It was
All right, well,
recently,
that's why I don't
anyway.
remember it. Okay.
Come on, get with it.
3 o'clock, right? Okay.
Okay.
All right, had my spinach today, so memory's good. Okay, Gasha Hoppen study draft submission.
I think that comes to the end here.
Yep.
Okay,
So at the last meeting, we introduced to the board the draft study for the Goshen Hoppen watershed. This is a plan of study specific to that area. And during that meeting, 2 things came out. One was inquiry about adjusting alternatives. So this is the area that we call the Goshen Mountain Watershed. It includes properties on Southwick Station Road, between Fulmer Road and Gravel Pike. It includes properties on Schwenk Road, a handful of properties on Sepp Road possibly. It also includes an area on Zieglerville Road, which is down near the Goshen Hoppen Creek. And all these areas in the last Act 537 plan are going to be addressed with a pump station along the Goshen Hoppen Creek. And that is no longer in the plans for the township. So we are preparing this sewage planning study to say how else will we serve these areas that we identified in our previous Act 537 as they will be served by this pump station. So we came up with alternative ways to serve these areas. I think we had A through J as a list of ways we could do this. And we did evaluations of each of those alternatives. And we presented that as a draft to the Planning Commission, and we presented that as a draft to the Board of Supervisors. At the last Board of Supervisors meeting, 2 questions came up, which were excellent questions. One was about option C, which was to run a force main down Schwenk Road and connect it to an existing manhole in Zieglerville Road. And one of the advantages raised to that by a board member was that we wouldn't have to go through a pumping station with that option as we would with some of the others. So we took a closer look at that. We expanded the potential of that to serve additional houses on Southwood Station Road and reevaluated that. And the cost per house came very close to what had been selected before, alternative B. So because we have the advantage with alternative C of not going through another pump station, we adjusted the study to make alternative C the selected solution. The other question that was raised was about step systems. And the sewer engineer is not here tonight, but he did prepare a memorandum on the advantages and disadvantages of step systems and why he believed that a step system was not an ideal solution for these areas. I have that memo in front of me. I could read parts of it if the board wished me to do so, but I don't have to. I'll take your direction on whether or not you want me to continue on that matter.
I'm okay with you not reading it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is not a decision here on whether or not this is exactly how the planning is going to go for the township. This is a decision of, would the board be agreeable to this document and this draft study being forwarded to the County Planning Commission, the County Health Department, and the Township Planning Commission for their comments? So I'm looking for a determination from the board if that would be an acceptable thing to do.
Before we do that, I think it would be helpful for the public. Can we put up, I know, do you have an updated, do you have an updated version of this?
I do. I sent that to the manager, or I could log in and Zoom.
I-
Plan?
It's the chart. It's the summary chart,
It's on page,
like,
That was part of what I put in the packet. right?
yeah.
it says
it's-
page 1 of 10.
It's
but I don't
page
know what-
3, there it is, you got it. Yeah,
Um,
just rotate it if you can.
Yeah, can you rotate it? Yeah, I think it would be helpful for the public to see, it breaks down. So let me start, can I start with option G? So option G would serve 16 properties. The owner cost would be $24,405, and the total cost per property served would be $58,289.84, and that is compared to other options to serve as Zieglerville Road of $83,700, $8,600, and $113,800. So that is the lowest cost solution for Zieglerville Road. And so what's the new option C? I can't read that from here.
Option C is essentially the same cost as option B, but we don't have a recurring cost of having to pump sewage through our pump station that will be coming online. And
Yeah.
we serve, I believe we serve a few more homes, 56
Yes.
versus 51.
Yes, that's correct.
But the other comment that I heard people say is that, hey, you know, the Interceptor is listed as the cheapest. It's not the cheapest. The Interceptor is listed here as $110,000 per home and $120,000 per home. So I'm not exactly sure how that math was being done, but that's significantly more than the option that has been selected in this report. So hopefully that clears things up for people.
Yeah,
And
I
that-
think the
Those
difference.
numbers have been there all along.
Yeah, I think the difference is that that option would use gravity, and therefore the direct property owner cost would be less, but the total cost of the project per home is about 25 to 30% more.
Yeah.
Actually, it's, in some cases, it's more like 100% more.
So my question is, so the planning commission is going to be looking, I think they asked to have a month to sort of think about their comments, right? But that was my recollection in the last planning commission meeting.
So that was essentially an informal presentation to the planning commission.
Yeah.
What we would be doing now is actually submitting it formally to the planning commission,
Okay.
the county planning commission, and the Department of Health, so that they can provide comments back. Now this would be the actual formal procedure, requesting comments, receiving comments, and then we need to address the comments.
Okay. It's happy you clarified that, because I wasn't sure how that was all working.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, Bob Burns, Doolittle Road. I think, Carol, I brought up, to either you or Chuck, the last time, E and F, have a cost to the homeowner of the 740526, which is the EDU payment, but there's no other cost.
If you look at that chart, that is reflected here now.
Oh, it's different than it
Yeah.
was last time?
Yep,
Okay.
updated chart.
Well, that answers my question, too. The numbers have been changed.
All right.
Yep. Thank you very much.
And also, did you, in one of the last meetings, Phil Smith gave you a copy of something he wanted you to add in there, where it was like a disclosure thing. It spoke about it's the property owner's responsibility if they have a septic system that's failing. Phil, you're here, aren't you? Or-
Yeah.
What-
You want to clarify
Well-
that better since you wrote it?
I thought, yes.
Hold on, let me just, is this a Phil Smith thing or a planning commission thing?
It was Phil's suggestion to Carol, and I guess Carol was going to take it under advisement.
All right, so I think it would be appropriate for Phil to bring that up at the planning commission meeting when they actually have a chance to review the document that we're going to be sending to them.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Are we ready to make a motion?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I move to authorize the township engineer to send the Goshen-Hoppen watershed sewage facilities planning to the appropriate county agencies and township planning commission, planning document, I should say, to the appropriate county agencies and township planning commission for their review.
And I will second. All those in favor signify, sorry, Supervisor Yiser made the motion and Supervisor Hexter made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Marla, we do have a hand up.
Oh, okay, sorry, go ahead. Is that you, Brian?
It is. Good evening. Brian Hill, 11 Zieglerville Road. Just going back to the chart, and I know they're not exact numbers, but you have a number that says 24,000, and you have another column that has a larger number. In that graph, what would a property, and just obviously for future opportunities, what would a property owner be responsible for, the 24,000 or the larger column number?
So the last column is the total cost of the project divided by the number of homes served. And the property owner costs are the tap-in fee, which is $7,405.26. And in the case
Right.
in the case of the Zieglerville Road option, there would also be the purchase of a grinder pump.
Right.
So that's the total.
So that in total would be the approximately $25,000 at this point, if that was
That's
the
correct.
project. Is
That's
that correct?
Yeah, is there anything?
Well,
Else you
I
wanna
just
add?
want to clarify, that's assuming that
Right.
makes an assumption,
Costs.
makes an assumption of how the township decides they want to fund it. Meaning that, the township always has at its ability, if they want to do, essentially a benefit assessment. Right? So I don't
Correct.
want you to go away thinking
Correct.
that
We can only
that's
do-
an absolute.
No, I get that, and I'm not asking absolute.
No,
I'm asking
I know.
approximate, and I was very clear on that.
Okay.
My question, I guess my next statement was, if you're going to do a benefit assessment, it can only be one way or the other. You can't, we can't be double dipping here either. So, I mean, I'm looking for perspective. That's all. I'm not looking for exact. It's just so that as I begin, to plan, I have at least an idea, and that's about where I thought I'd be. So I appreciate the information. Thank you.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Carol, it also include the decommissioning of the on-lot
That is
system.
correct, yes.
Yes. So that's also a property owner responsibility. Okay. Do we have any other questions?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Diane.
Diane Jurin, 9 Zieglerville Road. Just for clarification for Neighbor Hill and myself, I think I understood, Carol, that if we don't get a grant or some other kind of funding to pay for the pipe going up Zieglerville Road, then the residents that benefit from it will pay the whole $58,000 or whatever the amount is. But if we get a grant or the township decides to fund it in some other way, then residents would only be responsible for approximately that $24,000. Do I understand that correctly?
You're above my pay grade. So I'm presenting the cost of the project, the cost to individual residents to decommission and connect, and the cost per house divided out. The next step is how is that financed? That's a little further ahead than I am at this point. But the point of this is that once the planning is in place, two things can happen. The township can start pursuing grants for this kind of a project, and the township, should the elected officials decide to do so, could start setting aside money in a capital fund towards this type of thing. And as Mr. Geiser pointed out, there's still always the option an elected board can consider of a benefit assessment for the properties that are connected. So there's a myriad of ways that could get funded, and that's not determined yet.
Yeah. So to wrap it all up in a bow, anywhere between 24,000 to 58,000, and then if it's done in 10 years, those prices will be perhaps a little bit more. We're all hoping for the 24,000, but just to be clear, we don't know yet.
Yeah, I mean, this is planning, there's no formal design at this point. This is the numbers are a way to compare one option to the other using current unit prices. But you're right, when we planned what's happening out there on Fulmer Road, that was literally 10 years ago now.
Right.
So, things do change.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for working towards it anyway. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, we had a motion and a second. Ready to vote? Yes? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Oh, sorry. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So again, this is going to go to the county and township planning commissions for their comments. All right. Next, we have two zoning hearing board applications.
Yes. The zoning hearing board number 2023-04 Taminsky, 114 Susan Lane. They are requesting variances for minimum side yard setback and minimum rear yard setback, which are 40 and 75 feet each for the R1 zoning district. They'd like that to be 20 feet and 25 feet for the rear to build a garage. I don't know if they're present. We did send to both applicants that the board would be discussing, so I don't know if they're... Okay.
Is that you, sir? Would you like to come up and speak? And just please state your name and address.
Joseph Taminsky, 114 Susan Lane.
So could you just speak up a little bit because it won't get picked up on the recording and the people on Zoom can't hear you.
Joseph
Thank you.
Taminsky, 114 Susan Lane.
Do you have anything you'd like to tell us about your request?
So I need the setbacks because I'm trying to put the garage in a wooded area, so it sits back, doesn't disturb anyone else's property. Every property that it butts up against is wooded, all corners. the closest house to the back of the garage, maybe like 100 yards away, the actual house. And the area I'm putting it in is, I'm not disturbing really the wooded area. A lot of our ash trees, we have a ton taken out already. So I'm trying to put it in an area that's already kind of disturbed. And between the properties, I don't want to disturb either, so I'm kind of tuck it in. And if I move it too close, it'll be too close to my septic system. So I'm kind of, and the driveway kind of already leads up to that area. So that's kind of why I need the setbacks.
How big is the garage?
30 by 32.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Have your neighbors been receptive to this idea?
Yeah, well, my closest neighbor, I did talk to him. The other ones, I haven't talked to them. The one property that it butts up, corner, their house is like on another road. You don't see their house from our house. The one behind us, like I said, probably would be like 100 yards away still.
Okay.
And it's, you only see that property in the winter when there's no leaves on the trees.
Yeah, it can be helpful if all your neighbors approve of this when you come to the zoning hearing board.
Okay. I thought they're notified.
Because they will all be
They
notified.
will
Yeah,
be.
yeah.
But if you talk to them in advance, it can be helpful.
Okay.
So they're aware of what's going on. And
Okay. Just the one that's closest to my house. I did talk to him.
okay. Terry, you wanted to say something? No?
I mean, I have no opinion on it, so let the,
So would the board like to express no, what is it, no objection?
no, well, just says no opinion is what he.
No opinion?
You can just decline to,
Yeah.
you know, do anything on it. You don't have to take any action. You'll just go to the zoning hearing board, and the zoning hearing board will, review it and take whatever action it feels is appropriate. But you don't have to take a vote on it if you're not interested in it.
Well, it doesn't mean we're not interested in it. We're not interested in objecting to it.
Correct.
Right.
What would the board like to do?
I think, no opinion, let it
Yeah.
go to the zoning hearing.
Yeah, go with no opinion, let the zoning
Fair.
hearing.
I have no opinion. Go to the
Okay.
hearing.
All right.
I mean, just so you know, I mean, we're just weighing in, but you would always have to go to zoning hearing anyway, right? All right, so just to be clear, it's not like we're telling you to go to zoning hearing, you have to go there anyway.
This is part of the formality that the board is aware of,
Okay.
and that's why they're deciding if it was more, there's potential that they would have an objection, but this is part of the process.
Yeah, there have been some occasions where we have had an objection, and we would express that as part of the zoning hearing board evidence.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
We are going to set it for the 28th. I apologize for the little bit of clunkiness, but settle on the 28th. You'll be getting a formal letter. I'm supposed to receive that tomorrow from the zoning hearing board.
Yes, thank you for coming, and sorry it took so long. Sir, are you 205 Hendricks Road?
Yes.
Thank you. Please come forward.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the supervisors. My name is John McLean. I'm the attorney for Mr. and Mrs. Piatek, who are the applicants for this project. This is Mr. and Mrs. Piatek own the lot now. This is an undeveloped lot on Hendricks. It's an irregularly shaped lot that's sort of long and narrow, goes back and then kind of juts across, and then once again is long and narrow out where there's actually frontage on Colonial behind it. And they want to sort of build their dream house on this lot. A couple of obstacles. One is they have had soil testing done, and entire property, almost the entire property, are hydric soils. The zoning ordinance indicates we can't disturb those, and with certain exceptions, we don't meet any of those exceptions. So we have asked for variance from that requirement in the ordinance. And then there's also a couple of pre-existing non-conforming issues. What I call the building envelope is required to be, I think, at least a half acre. We don't have that size. And then the frontage of the house, or frontage of the property itself is 100 foot wide, and you require 200 foot wide at the rear building line, if I have that, remember that correctly. There have been plans submitted. I know there's been some back and forth with your engineer. She's taken a look at the plan and provided comments to the Piotex engineer for consideration. So that is what we are asking of the board. I do apologize, Mr. and Mrs. Piotek were not able to make it this evening. I don't know if they zoomed in or not.
So just to clarify, this is in the R1, and how large is the property?
Property itself is, I think, 3.6 acres.
Okay.
But this is actually, I've got my advocate hat on. This is actually one of those properties that does have an unusual shape. You know, that can't be developed in strict conformity with the zoning ordinance in terms of the width and the allowable building part of it.
Here,
Oh,
Mom. Shows
yeah.
you how narrow it is, and that's where
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick the house. That's the problem.
Okay. Does the board have any questions?
So, how would you, I mean, I guess this is a question for Eric. How would they overcome the issue with respect to the hydric soils? I mean, is there,
So that's really the crux of the problem here. We run into the resource protection standards ordinance that was implemented in the past year. And the entire site has soils that are considered by the soil survey to be hydric. Apparently they had a soil scientist go out and evaluate that and found the same thing. Now the fact that they're hydric does not mean that they're wetlands. It just means they don't drain well. But it does not make them wetlands. And if there was another place on this lot that they could move the house and be out of the hydric soil, well, then that would solve the problem. But really, the entire lot is mapped as hydric soils. So I don't see that ultimately as inhibiting building on a lot. It's the ordinance itself that is causing the challenge here. And that's what they would be presenting to the zoning hearing.
they have the additional challenge of setbacks too,
Yeah.
as well, right? Because from looking at the size of the house they're planning to build, they're getting awful close to the size of the property.
My recollection of what I reviewed, and it's been some time, but my recollection of what I reviewed, the house that they proposed was not violating the setbacks. It was a very oddly shaped lot, and they had a house at a bit of an angle so that they met the existing setbacks. But
Okay.
that was, you know, the lot width and the lot dimensions were what I believe, I'm not a lawyer, but what I believe are existing nonconformities.
Right.
But the real challenge here is the resource protection standards code regarding hydric soils.
If I could, Madam Chair, the building itself, that's proposed to be constructed sort of is on a diagonal or a slant in the property. So there's no side yard setback or front or rear yard variances that are required. I think the one area of the property where there weren't hydric soils, there was a different type of soil, was what I'll call the front immediate right on the property. That's got, I'm from Delaware County, we don't have to deal with soils a whole lot, but I've learned. But that's got Lehigh soils in the front there, and that's where the on-site septic is proposed in that area. I presume from an engineering standpoint to put that in that area where it's obviously, we would have to comply with stormwater management. There's 2 rain gardens, areas that are proposed to handle that. And I know there's been some comments from the engineer about even improving or where those things are located. Overspills and that sort of thing. There's been some suggestions on that obviously we'll have to make sure our engineers adequately address those in any plans.
Does the board have an opinion about how it would like to proceed on this?
I would just send it to the zoning hearing board for the decision and have no opinion on it.
Yeah, I agree. So as you know from the previous one, it's not our role to make a decision, but we can provide an opinion or no opinion to zoning hearing and let them make a determination. Terry and Chuck?
I agree.
Yeah, I'll let the zoning
Yeah,
sort
they've
it
got some
out.
challenges.
I have no opinion on it.
Okay, so there you go.
Thank you very much
Good
for your
luck.
time and consideration.
Nice meeting
Thank
you.
you.
All right, next topic is the Loctite approval of development documents.
Yes, I have a series of documents that we prepared for this development, and they have all been executed by Loctite. And I'm just looking for a motion to authorize the chair to execute all these documents on behalf of the township. The plans are actually already recorded. As Carol mentioned, that they're actually starting work, which is fine on the site. This is just the last of the paperwork that needs to be completed at this time. These documents are, my forms that I prepared in negotiation with Black's attorney. I'm good with them. They're pretty much standard form for this sort of development.
So what would the motion be again?
Need a motion to authorize the chair to execute the development documents for Loctite.
Okay, do I have that motion?
Yes, Chuck Yers will make the motion to authorize our chair to execute the development documents for Loctite.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Taylor.
Thank you. So Supervisor Yiser made the motion, Supervisor Orff made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
That was easy. All right. Next one is the Township Building Meeting Room Policy. Is the board ready to vote on that? I know we talked about that recently. Or,
Yeah, I'm ready.
and I think, Peter, you added something to that about nonprofits and a couple other things.
Well, I went through the draft policy and did make actually more changes than I originally intended.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Um,
But what the policy basically states or allows this room to be rented while the township building is open by a resident of the township on behalf of him or herself or on behalf of an organization they represent. As long as that organization is a nonprofit organization and the meeting is for certain kind of informational, educational, social purposes, and they meet all the requirements of the policy, the room can be rented. We specifically don't allow it to be rented to people who are not residents of the township, and we specifically don't allow it to be rented for commercial purposes, nor for political purposes, which, as was discussed 2 weeks ago, based on our review of the law, is completely appropriate.
I'm sorry, I have another question.
Go right ahead.
So let's say a musical group wants to come in here. Can we say no?
A what
'Cause
group?
a musical group that would be making,
There are there are requirements regarding the impact the use in this building, in this room would have on other users in the building.
okay, all right.
So, yeah, if someone comes in here and they're making a lot of noise and, we can't run township operations, no, that's not gonna happen. So generally speaking, probably most musical groups wouldn't work if, I don't know, if it's something soft in May.
Okay.
Yeah.
And another thing that occurred to me was, what if they want to come in here and throw pots or do painting that could potentially
No,
cause damage?
there's requirements that, one, they're not allowed to mark up anything or paint anything. They're not allowed to do any sort of activities that would cause damage to the
Okay.
room, to the fixtures, to the furniture, to our equipment. So, yeah, it's something like painting would not be allowed, not allowed to, light candles or incense or something to that effect. It's really designed for, what I would say, some sort of community gatherings, discussions. Maybe a homeowners association wants to have their annual meeting here or something to that effect. That's what it's really aimed towards. No parties, no birthday parties, wedding celebrations or anything like that. Nothing like that.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board?
I don't even know why we're even gonna open it up for anything. I'll be honest with you. I was against it from the beginning.
So is the board ready to vote on this, or not?
I mean,
I don't-
There's certainly a lot of changes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason to rush into it.
Okay,
I mean,
so do you want to,
When I sent this to Jason the end of last week, I was like, yeah, we probably should push this off. So please don't
Okay.
feel obligated, like we need to act on this now. There's no reason to. There are actually some questions on certain things that I want to talk to Jason about. So it might be better to push this, kind of kick this can down the road.
It'll just be brought up next month. And it'll be on another list like tonight.
so what would the board like to do?
Well, I mean, I think there's a couple general questions that we should input on, like right up top, says all meetings must be open to the public, and Peter says, why? That's, Jason shouldn't be answering that, we should be answering that question
Well,
if we're gonna move forward with
if
it.
it's a group or a club, why would they need to be open to the public? The point of the meeting here is they want
Right.
to have a meeting.
But that's what's in.
Yeah.
So he's asking.
Yeah.
Basically, are we okay taking that out? I'm okay taking that out.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it has to do with some administrative things that maybe Jason can do. Removing the Board of Supervisors from the decision-making process seemed like it was a good idea.
Yeah.
I'd say more like insulating or buffering, yes.
Saying you can cancel a reservation for any reason, that shouldn't be there.
No.
So,
Well, it says, in the event of emergency. It says, they reserve the right to cancel reservations without notice in the event of emergency, such as snow closings or unsafe conditions. So it does provide the reasons.
right, but there's another statement that says, reservations
next
may be
one.
subject to cancellation by the Board of Supervisors or their designee for any reason. It's,
What kind of reasons would there be?
Well,
Well,
I
The- I mean, the electricity went out,
I
or-
deleted that because it's arbitrary, and
Yeah,
since we're dealing with
no.
constitutional issues, we can't be arbitrary.
Yeah, no, I mean, if the power goes out or something, yes, we'll cancel it.
Yeah, emergencies,
Yeah.
power, storms, that's perfectly appropriate. But just with, allowing us to say, we don't like you, get out. No, that's not.
right, and, then there's, if for some reason it's canceled because of a snow event, do they get their refund back?
And that's something I need to talk to Jason about, is that,
Right.
Cancellation fee, if we cancel, what happens to the fees that we're paying?
So maybe.
I think
I think they should get them back if
Jason
they're
and
not
I,
here.
we should have a discussion, and we can make a recommendation to you.
Okay.
So it sounds like we're not going to act on this tonight. Is that okay with everybody? Yep.
I mean, are there any other big questions you need answered by our group as opposed to just Jason? I didn't see any.
I don't, just quickly going through all my comments. I mean, there's some issues regarding fees and escrows, but once again, I think that's something Jason and I should have a conversation about and then come to you with a recommendation. And that would be it.
Okay.
All right. Township meeting room upgrade.
Okay, so based on our 520, the board's 523 meeting and the recommendation, updated quote that's in front of you, remove the wall-mounted 85-inch TV and added another 75-inch TV on a stand, with the goal of that if we pay to have it installed on the wall, it doesn't work for people, then we're stuck removing and moving, or whereas the two TVs on cars obviously allows us more flexibility to put them where we need to put them. I also, based on the ask of the board, as far as having a camera so we have a camera from the back and a camera from the front, so that when we do have speakers and stuff, we can zoom in if necessary, or if they're presenting something. So we're kind of covering both sides of the room, as opposed to just having the one rear camera that kind of shows the full room. While I could zoom in, you're really looking at back of heads. And so that's changed the total quote amount to $20,582.63. If the board is okay with the quote, the balance above what was budgeted in the general fund, this could be something we could use our ARPA funds for, since we haven't used any ARPA funds on our meeting room upgrades. I don't know if you guys had discussed that previously with the panels or anything else that you guys, the board had previously discussed.
I remember the last time we talked about this, Terry, you suggested not having the wall-mounted TV. And I wonder if it would make sense to just purchase one TV and see how that's working out. And what's the second TV going to be used for?
Well, the thought I had with the two TVs is that you kind of have a TV for the audience, you have a TV for the board. We can, and you're moving the room around, we can kind of accommodate what's happening within the room by having multiple TVs. Most certainly larger meeting rooms that I've been in, you've got some that are up that have four screens. So usually there is multiple access so that people can see what's going on. And in this case, with both being on the cart, what I would envision is one cart kind of facing the board, because I know you guys kind of have to look through the back of my head now, but then the other one would be able to face the audience so that they have a better view of what we're displaying on the screen. So that was my original thought with having multiple TVs, just basically based on the size of our room.
Okay, and then so we wouldn't use this projector at all?
No.
Okay, that would be a big improvement.
Yes, I would agree.
And just one other question, so we're going to go with the wired microphones?
Yes, so I
Okay.
did it, that was one of the things I changed in the quote, and I believe that was kind of unanimous at the wire, and obviously we've been having some technical difficulties tonight, which has been lovely. So I think to alleviate some of the frustration we've had with the remote, as we have with this portable one here, I think you guys were on board with having it nice.
Yeah, and most of the public knows the history of this, is we've gone a long way from putting these panels on the wall, trying to improve the acoustics in this room, trying to improve the experience for the public who sits in the room, and also for members of the public who are on Zoom who have a harder time hearing and seeing what is going on. So this is all part of being able to reach more people and have more people involved in what we are doing, and have a good experience doing it.
I don't have any questions.
So your final recommendation for the two TVs, 75 and an 85?
No, two 75s. The 85 in the original quote with the 85 that on the cart, which is what the board looked at last year.
Yeah.
It's cumbersome. That cart cost more because that extra size puts it, it makes it, I think, probably over top it.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, it's got to be more rigid and bigger.
Yeah, and you know, not that I would think we'd be moving around much, but I did utilize a cart and a TV at my lab, and you know, you do gotta be cognizant of where, you know, how you're pushing it around, so.
So the new installation quote is just under $6,000, and that's not including mounting a TV.
I asked him about that because that didn't change much from, I don't believe it changed at all from the previous, and it's really based on time. That's what I told, because we do have an extra camera mount, or we do have an extra camera in that, and then to do the TV and, with the additional mount. But I did inquire about the fact that
It's pretty heavy.
number didn't seem to change.
What was do you remember the quote before? TV? It just seems like that didn't change at all.
I don't believe it did, Terry.
Okay.
I think if you went back to the previous.
Can you ask about that to just confirm that's correct?
I did.
Oh, you did?
When I
Oh,
saw it,
okay.
yeah, because I was anticipating it might go down. Now, I don't know how long, you know, I don't know the difference in time installing it on the wall compared to on the cart, because, so it's. But like I said, we do have the extra, we would have the extra camera to install as part of that, so I think they based it on expected time.
Any questions?
What is there, a money tree out back?
Pardon?
What are we growing, a money tree out back?
Buried, Terry, buried.
No.
Yeah, I would need more time to think this through, because I'm not entirely convinced that having two 75-inch screen TVs that we're going to be rolling around the room is such a smart idea. I don't know whether, for one reason, is I don't think this room is configured appropriately. I think I'd rather spend money fixing this, changing the orientation of this room so we could actually have properly mounted screens. I mean, that's one of the problems with the way this room is shaped. You don't actually have an appropriately placed flat surface to look at. That's why we're always looking this way and that way. So, you know, and you're not talking, you're talking some, you know, like, I don't know, a money tree necessity, but this is not an insignificant amount of money that we're talking about. So I'm pretty hesitant. I mean, you don't particularly care for the projection unit. Now, I wasn't here for the last time you discussed this, so this may have been all talked about. But you can get better projections and you get better screens for those projectors, and they're a lot more mobile, and depending upon how good your screens are. I'll need, you know, I'm not in any position to vote on this. If you ask me to vote on it today, I'd have to go against it, because I don't know, I'm struggling with the audio part. I get additional cameras, I get that. That part makes sense to me, but these TVs, I don't know.
As I said, and I've worked with one TV, and the challenge is that the board can see what the audience can see. And either way we try to place it, that way it was a much smaller room, somebody couldn't see.
Right.
And that was the thought behind having multiple as opposed to just the one. That's just with my experience with that.
No, the multiples make sense from the standpoint of having it so that both parties can see, right? Because I can look at the audience, but if there is a screen here that was projecting up the information so that I could see it, but they would project it somewhere else so that they could see it. But just having a little bit of sticker shock here from the numbers. I hadn't seen the numbers before, and that's on me because I wasn't around.
It is in our budget.
Is it?
Most of it, yeah. I think 16,000 is in our budget.
Yeah,
Sorry,
and it is-
16,000 and change is in the budget. So there'd be just a few thousand, a little bit over that we could take out of ARPA.
$16,233.85.
Yep,
Yeah, that's what was
that's
budgeted
correct.
for this
It was
year.
in our budget, yeah.
And it is commercial grade equipment, so it's not your resident, you know,
So it's in the budget. How does everybody else feel? Terry? Chuck?
I'm not sure about the second TV set, but I haven't really thought about, I don't really understand where that would be.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a challenge. I mean, I can barely read it. I don't know if people in the audience can see that, but, you know, we put up plans, we put up all kinds of things. It would be really nice if the public could see that.
We can't see that.
I
mean,
know, that's-
Warren got up and walked over to read it.
I know, that's a problem, and that, having the
You know, all
TV
stuff
set.
you guys were talking about
Yeah.
earlier, and I brought up weeks before, you know, if the TV's sitting out here and Jason's putting the stuff up on his computer, and we can all read it, and Zoom can see it, and everything else, I mean.
That's
you
the
know,
idea.
That's why we need it. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, you guys should be able to see it as well.
So we're only gonna put $4,348 more dollars, 78 cents into it then, am I correct? If it's in the budget.
Yeah, that's not what's covered, right. That would be above and beyond what we budgeted, yeah.
Right, am I correct? That's what I'm
Yeah.
understanding.
I mean, for me, I'm not saying, the audience, I could see they would want TV, like, you know, so you could see. I mean, for me, most of the time I'm looking,
Yeah.
on my laptop, when I'm looking at plans, if it's in our packet, which actually for me is easier to be looking at.
Yeah, but this is terrible.
Do you wanna go with one TV then, Chuck?
I don't think I'm gonna see the TV any better than I see that projector, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's true.
That's more than 75 inches over there.
But it's in the wrong place. It's too far away.
If you had a great big giant roll down screen on the wall over here, everybody could see it.
Jason,
Yeah.
if you're sending the signal to the TV, can't you send the signal to their laptops?
Well, we have all the information in our packets.
Yeah, I don't think we need it.
No.
I mean, we're all up here with
No,
iPads, yeah.
yeah, I don't think we need, I mean, there's also, the other thing is, when we're looking at, like Chuck just said, I was just scrolling through the plans to find what that lot looked like and so forth. Can't do that if you're projecting to, you're limited to what you're projecting now, basically. You could do make it a virtual second screen, I imagine, which is what you were talking about, so slide it over to the TV. I've done that, seen and done that before, but you're going to have to project. Somebody will need to take the step if there's something to be projected to that TV.
It's really just sharing, I'm sharing my screen as I do now.
It would be the TV instead of the
So
screen.
Yeah.
I'm
So
sharing
what-
it to the TVs.
What
as
I'm
opposed to-
what I'm getting at is, in an ideal world, you'd be able to do, and basically project something to the monitor that was different than what you're projecting right now. It's just your desktop on there.
I'm not sure why I would be projecting something different than what we're talking about. I'm not understanding that. But
Because right now, you can't show more than you just have, like when we brought up, for bringing up the plans, if you wanted to show people the plans, you could put the entire plans on the screen, and just that. And that's, right now, you can't do that because you need to see the Zoom, you need to see the Zoom stuff at the same time.
I mean, you can do, I've worked with the TV before.
Yeah, okay.
It's, but if you guys, you know, it's certainly what you guys do.
Well, I know one of the complaints we hear a lot is that the public can't see, and I think that's a problem we need to solve.
Then let's make a decision.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Diane.
Diane, 9 Zieglerville Road.
Can you-
Physically show us where the TV on the cart is going to be? Because if it's here, then we can't see you. And you can't
That's a good
see
thing.
us. That's good. So, where's,
It's gonna be off, the TVs are gonna be off to the side, not looking to restrict.
Be closer to us than
Yes. the
But
TV
it'll be angled, it
So
won't
the
be on
TV
the
for the
wall.
audience would be
TV
like
can sit right here.
And then the TV for the board would be like maybe on the other side of the table, so it is bringing it closer.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sticking it in front of the audience. That's
Go ahead, Gary.
Gary Bonner, Fulmer Road. Did you consider Warren's suggestion, a large screen that's high that you can see over people's heads, everybody can see it? And it could be used for other things that go on in the room as well.
We did talk about having a fixed TV, and as I remember the conversation, and correct me if I'm misremembering it, we felt that we'd all be kind of turning our heads, and it would still not necessarily be convenient. So we were concerned that having something fixed would give us less flexibility.
75 inches isn't very large for a room this size.
That's my feeling.
well, you need two.
Even then, if it's when you
All right,
sit in the-
so I'm gonna just ask the board, does the board want to make a decision tonight on the proposal we have before us, or do we want to continue discussing it? Now, in addition to the TVs, this also includes improved microphones, and it includes another camera. So it's not just about the TVs. All right, board. Do you want to make a decision tonight, or do you want to make a decision another
I don't
time?
want to talk about it again.
Yeah, I agree. So,
I just think it's funny how different the conversation was from 2 weeks ago.
so does that mean the board would like to make a decision tonight? Yes or no? Come on, guys. We want to get home
So I definitely
sometime.
want to get new microphones and new cameras. Okay. I am stuck on the TV thing too. These are good points. That's 75 inches, you had two of those. Does that make our life better, or are we gonna hate it in a year?
Well, do you want to just do one and see how we like it? And then delay the purchase of the second one?
Can we just do the microphones and the cameras, and we'll think more about options? Because I've been in large rooms like this, and they put up a giant, those projections work well on big screens. I mean, I've spoken in front of rooms twice the size of this that have that type of setup. So it is feasible to do it without having to lock yourself into a TV forever. I mean, I'm comfortable with the microphones and the cameras. I think that makes perfect sense. These things they're blocking everybody's view of me, which is terrible. No, I'm kidding. But I think we need to think more about this, the video aspect of this.
Well, the advantage of the TV is you can move them around. So we do have occasions in here, for example, if we had a public event, you could put the TV in other places. You can't do that with a fixed screen, and that's the conversation we had before, Terry. I think you brought that up. You thought that having the fixed screen would give us less flexibility.
I say we buy a TV, one TV, microphones, camera, and make sure we can get the same, whatever, on the second one if we like it. Call it.
Yeah, I agree. I think, let's see how the one TV works, and maybe it'll be enough, and we'll see. Is that proposal acceptable?
Is the guy, Jason, is he giving us like a package deal?
They're CoStar's dealer, so we're getting CoStar's pricing.
All right.
So I think the only thing maybe with the labor, but I think if you guys aren't comfortable enough with the two, let's err on the side of caution.
Well, I mean, if it's permissible, say, hey, we want to go with the package with one TV. And if we decide in 6 months to buy the second one, we'd be willing to honor the pricing you have in there?
Yeah,
That's what I would ask.
I could ask about it,
Yeah.
because their quotes seem to be a month at a time, which I know from my former retail days, you don't put in, you like to put an end date to that. so
Sure,
that
I get that.
Whenever their pricing change, which I think usually is in like March. So I
Yeah.
think if, we should have enough time to kind of feel it out, and, we feel that the board feels we want the second one.
Right.
Before we get to that point. Retail seems to be, on that March seems to be, because we ran into that with the copiers.
Yeah.
They kept talking about that April 1st date.
Does that sound reasonable?
Okay, is that acceptable then?
That is with me.
Dan?
It's acceptable.
Okay, then would someone like to make the motion to accept the quote with a change of one TV instead of two?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Accept the quote that you call them and set up that for the second one, the whole, and if we like it, we'll buy the second one.
All right, do I have a second?
Chuck Geiser will second.
Thank you. So Supervisor Sachs made the motion, Supervisor Yiser made the second. Do we need to put the total amount in the motion? Do you have that?
Up
or-
to 20,000, just from 16,000 up to 20,000.
Well, it'll be less with only one TV.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Would-
But I guess that's for Peter. Do we need to,
I think if you go up to 18,000.
do we need to put the amount
I would
in?
just, yeah, I would do not to exceed 20,000.
Okay, not to exceed 20,000, okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, wow, all righty. Next is a resolution for reallocation of the general fund budget line items.
Okay, so this was something that the board discussed at their May 2nd general meeting. The police were requesting to purchase a car this year, and because they were not currently an administrative assistant, they wish to use that budget line item along with the police vehicle capital line item to purchase the vehicle this year. Peter and I discussed, and this was the way for the township to reallocate the funds. So the resolution that you're looking at would be to amend line item 410.120, administrative system, changing that from 40,000 to 0, and changing line item 410.740, police vehicle, from 18,500 to 58,500 for the 2023 fiscal year budget.
And what's the resolution number?
That would be resolution 2023 R-14.
14. All right, so for the public, this is just moving some money in the police budget from one account to another to pay for a new police vehicle. So the money is all in the budget, they are just taking it from another account, and we need to have a resolution to do this. Would someone like to make that motion? And again, it's 2023 R-14. All right, I will make it. I move to adopt Resolution 2023 R-14, amending the general fund budget of 2023 to provide for the reallocation in unencumbered funds appropriate to various line items of the budget. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. So Supervisor Hexter made the motion, Supervisor Sachs made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And the next item is to ratify the purchase of the police vehicle.
So, once again, at that 5-2 meeting, we discussed the purchase of a 2023 vehicle. At the time, Sergeant Cass was under the impression no more vehicles were available. That's when we discussed combining line items, and the board was open to that, so that the police department could continue to search out and see if they could find a car elsewhere. After the meeting, Sergeant Cass made further inquiries to Cut 33, and apparently they held a vehicle for the township. At this time, as this was a time sensitive and we kind of hold for us, we could not wait for the 523 work session. I pulled the board individually and received authorization to move forward with the purchase. This would be ratifying the purchase of the 2023 police vehicle from Cut 33 in the amount of $52,236.
All right. Would someone like to make that motion?
Question?
Yes.
So that vehicle, then we would fit it out?
So Cut 33, they're one-stop shop.
Yep.
So they do the fit, which is what Sergeant Cass, that's what we're waiting for. So we don't have an ETA yet. I think they're waiting for some items. Some dealerships do all encompassing, some just sell you the vehicle and then you've got to get it outfitted elsewhere.
So this amount includes
Yes, sir.
soup to nuts?
Yep.
All right.
All right.
So this means we'll have an extra vehicle, like a backup vehicle? Is that the idea?
Right now, the fleet with us being with 4 full-time officers right now, along with Chief Maxey still. So this would take one of the high mileage vehicles and kind of turn that into kind of the backup vehicle, or we could look to do something else different with that if the board so chose.
But I mean, I know I'm dragging this out, but the goal is to get us on a program.
So
Right.
this is gonna come up more in the summer into the fall when we look at the capital replacement plan. Generally with police vehicles, especially police vehicles that are on the road, your shelf life tends to be 5 years. It's just, I won't say it's a magical number, it just seems to be, with cars that are out on the road, the way they're handled, 5 years seems to be the shelf life. As the board's aware, we've got some older vehicles with some higher mileage, and then we start seeing some repair issues, which I think we ran into with one of the Tahoe, I think was. So that's usually why we try to have 5 years, and ideally we stagger that out so that we're not trying to buy 2 vehicles in 1 year, and you're trying to spread out. Because certainly, the vehicle for the chief, you can usually extend that out to 8 to 10 years sometimes, or, whatever, so that would be the schedule that we'd be looking at.
I'm okay approving, I just want to make sure that we're have a plan.
Yes.
So that we're not caught off guard like we were this year.
No, that's what the board will be seeing with the capital replacement.
Okay.
Is you'll see vehicles, equipment, the full Monty, and what we anticipate is the replacement years for that, and then that's what I envision, and that's what the board will adjust from year to year when comparing budget time.
Okay.
But you're trying to stow away from that, like kind of, as Terry had said before, like we were trying to do with this police vehicle with the 18,005.
Yeah.
Shoes.
So you need a motion?
Please.
Chuck Yeiser will make it. I move to ratify the purchase of a 2023 police vehicle from Coke 33 in the amount of $52,236.
I will second that.
I'll second it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll give you the next
Did
one,
you?
Terry. I did. You
Sorry.
got the next one. So Supervisor Yeiser made the motion, and Supervisor Hexter made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Approval for open space appraisal.
So, This parcel that's on the board's agenda tonight was discussed prior to the meeting. As is the case with properties that are, when you have active discussions, you give it a file number. We don't refer to what the property is or give information out. So that's why you're seeing it as OSC number 29. So what the Open Space Committee is looking for is for the board to authorize funding of 50% of the cost for an appraisal for a property listed as OSC number 29, not to exceed $2,500.
Is there any discussion? Would someone, oh, Terry, do you want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion. OSC request to receive the authorization for the appraisal OSC 29. I move to authorize the funding of 50% of cost for an appraisal for a property OSC number 29, not to exceed $2,500.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Supervisor Sachs made the motion, Supervisor Orff made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Approval of Perkiomen Watershed Conservancy sign project.
Okay, so in March 2020, the board adopted a resolution stating its wish to participate in the PWC's multi-municipal grant application for water trail signs to be installed along the Perkiomen Creek Water Trail, which is operated by the PWC. I had a meeting with Ryan Belts a few months ago, who's the executive director of PWC back in March, to discuss this project. This was held up during the pandemic, and he's doing the follow-up to get these signs installed. As part of this project, Zachary Gillinger, a Boy Scout from Troop 119 in Evansburg, installed fishing line recycling units. He was installing fishing line recycling units along with the PWC signs. We had some confusion on approval, and the Park and Recreation Board let me know that he did install his unit without the board's approval, so we do have pictures of what it looks like. He was ambitious, and I didn't choose to fire back in a boisterous way, even though he basically kind of didn't wait for the approval and just assumed he could do what he wanted to do,
So we're approving this after the fact?
Yes.
Okay. So this project has already been completed?
But the PWC sign has not been installed.
Okay, so that's
two separate things.
Got it.
And you've got
There's a picture of it,
examples
see?
of what
Yeah.
it's going to look like.
Right.
That's what he installed.
Yeah.
Okay. When we get our TV, we'll be able to show it to all of you. Go ahead, Pam.
Pam Wright,
Can you-
Chair of the Park Board. Our question was, who's gonna own, is PWC gonna monitor and do the recycling of the filament that is collected in those collection documents? Who owns that? Because it's a recycling system. And our Boy Scout was not forthcoming with information on that when I requested information on.
While I don't like to assume, I
Who's
believe
gonna own it?
we're probably going to be owning it, because that Boy Scout will get old enough to not be returning, which I've seen with different Boy Scouts in the different municipalities I've served, usually with some of the projects. Now it's something, it's not usually like this, it's a kiosk or some other type of project. That's not something that needs, I guess, maintenance. So I guess at some point, if we choose, we can remove it if it becomes an issue.
All right. I was going to wait till Dan got back.
But we can ask the Conservancy.
When Brian talked to me about it, he just kind of threw it in as, I was aware that he, they kind of partnered, because usually, Evansburg troop, usually you're dealing with troops within our area. I can't say Evansburg is. So it's my understanding he's doing it, he's along the signs, with the signs kind of outside of his area as part of his Eagle Scout project.
Got it.
So I think it's good to support. I just would have preferred if he had waited for us to bless it. And this was just a matter This kind of fell off my radar a bit with everything we've had going on after I talked to Ryan, so.
So I guess regarding continuing recycling, maybe if the park board has some other thoughts on this, you can share them with us at a later date.
You just made another project for us.
Well, I mean, I think that's, anyway, that's what I meant. All right,
We'll monitor, and once again, if it becomes an issue or if other things get thrown in there, we'll act accordingly.
I mean, it says here, the watershed will maintain the unit after it's installed.
It does.
What it says in the email
Oh, okay, well then I guess.
from Zach sent to
Well,
you.
did Zach
See
say
that?
that?
That's where I'm
Or
not.
did the watershed?
All right, that's why I said,
Yeah.
talk to Ryan.
Yeah, I'm not, I can so if the board approves the PWC sign, I can circle back with Ryan and say, hey, are you guys gonna take care of this? We do know, obviously, they're up and down the creek, so that would certainly seem feasible.
Okay, so, do I have a motion to approve Brook Dearborn Watershed Conservancy to install a water trail sign at Foy Park and further authorize the Eagle Scout Fishing Line Recycling Unit project at Foy Park retroactively?
Chuck Yiser will make the motion stated by our chair.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. So Supervisor Yiser made the motion, Supervisor Byrd made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, this should be an easy one. Fire police requests.
Okay, so this is actually why I had to amend the agenda, because apparently the school district didn't think to ask us for use of our fire police until Chris Melville reached out to us yesterday, so. These are requests by Skip-Back Township for their July 4th parade. It's a request from the Brookhaven Valley School District dated for their commencement ceremony this Friday. And then it would be for several events. I think it's the concert series from Schwenksville for their concert series during the summer.
Okay. I will make that motion to authorize the use of Lower Frederick Fire Police for all of those events mentioned. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Dan Orr.
Thank you. Supervisor Hexter made the motion, Supervisor Orff made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, and the last item,
So this is basically, since the board formally appoints, I usually have the board formally accept the resignation, not that, I don't know how you can't accept it, because someone expresses they're done, so this is the formal action of accepting the resignation from Noel Halter from the Environmental Advisory Council for the term ending 12/31/2024, effective 5/19/2023.
right, so it's more like the board acknowledging the resignation.
And it gets on
So-
the record, it gets in the record then.
All right, so board acceptable to everyone, will acknowledge the resignation?
Yes.
Okay, is that sufficient? Okay, all right, and that brings us to, thank you, you're ahead of me. Board and commission reports, Environmental Advisory Council, Gary.
As just mentioned, we have another vacancy on the AC, we're back up to 2 vacancies. At our May meeting, we voted to request the board to okay our proceeding with the Birdtown application. We submitted an application, copy of our application to Jason. As part of that, there's also a requirement that the board pass a resolution, and a draft resolution was also submitted. So we're requesting okay to move forward with.
So will that be on our work session? Where are we with that?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. All right.
We also continue our discussion about recycling opportunities, working towards making more recycling available to and information to the residents of the township. We're looking into expanding, coming up with a web page and resources. And lastly, our Did You Know this month is a link to a CDC fact sheet about mosquito control. if it ever rains again, we can come. That's all.
We can only hope. Any questions for the EAC?
No, thank you, Gary.
Yep. All right. Planning Commission?
Planning
Greg, go ahead.
Commission, this is Greg. We met on May 18th. I feel like maybe my report should be first in your meeting. You pretty much discussed everything that we talked about. We reviewed a sketch plan for Saxon Sons on Gravel Pike, and we reviewed the comments from our Lower Frederick engineer, Carol. We also had a discussion of the Goshen Hoppin watershed special study that you talked in detail about tonight, and we requested an extra month to review so that we could have our comments for the board. And we went through the omnibus zoning ordinance 2 that you went through in detail tonight as well. That was the meeting.
Thank you. All right, Open Space Committee? Anyone here for that? Andrew?
Hi, yes. This is Andrew Lang, report for the Open Space Committee. We met on May 10th, 2023. At the meeting, we had a discussion about making a formal request to the board on a proposal to cover a 50% cost for a property appraisal, which the board voted for a short time ago. We also had a discussion about potential contracted services with Natural Lands if we should need to use them in the future. Natural Lands being a third-party land preservation agency that we worked with in the past, and had confirmed to us that the Board of Supervisors had approved a rate schedule for Natural Lands back in the fall. So if we ever found ourselves wanting to contract services with them, that would be the rate schedule that we used. And then we also, for a significant part of the meeting, went over and reviewed past materials that the committee has used in the existence of the committee over the last 2 years, and previous open space materials predating the establishment of the committee, towards creating and establishing a comprehensive file archive to ensure that past materials can be referenced. That will be an ongoing project, but we started it in earnest at this meeting. That's the body of the report. Open to any questions if anyone on the board or anyone in the public has any.
Any questions for the Open Space Committee?
No.
Nope. Thank you, Andrew. All right, Pam?
Thank you.
Good evening, Pam Wright for the Park Board. We had our June meeting at Coble Park last night. We scheduled several meetings during the year for the Park Board to meet at our parks, during which time we do a walk around, review the park, do a walk and talk through the park. This helps us develop plans for future projects, and also off of this it will trigger a review and a safety review for the park, safety inspection done by a team that was assigned last night. And that generates a list of corrective actions for the Public Works crew, and also gives us some ideas for where we're going to go forward with that. We had a successful native plant event in May. We had about 200 people in attendance, got very good positive feedback. We have a working group that was assigned last night to start working on next year's planning, so we're already starting to think about, we've talked about what went well and what we would change, and we're already planning the next one for next year. That particular project, that particular event took a lot of pre-planning, and a lot of things had to come together to make it happen. And I'm very, very happy, the Park Board is very happy with the level of support that we get. As Jason said, the Public Works crew supported us. We also had personal support from Tom Manning, let us borrow his trailer again, which we needed because we had a whole lot of stuff we had to get to the park on a Saturday and get loaded up and securely manned, and that helped us a lot. RJ got us chairs and some extra tables from the fire company. Noelle Halter and Diane Jurin helped us with the leaf printing with the kids. Noah Phillips and Take It Outdoors donated the tent, saved us a lot of rental money. And Bill McGovern helped transport the TV, fancy TV in a box. And we had our fire police supporting us for the parking. With the kids, that's really important to keep the site safe. So our thanks to everyone who comes out and helps support us in those means. Our next event is free, next first summer concert, June 22nd at Cuddy Park. It's Barefoot Bobby and the Breakers. We're also going to have downtown scoop ice cream, and Engage Arts will be there with face painting. We are in drought. I don't think I'm telling anybody anything they don't know. Sunday we put the water gators back on the new trees in Village Center Park, and we've started the watering procedure with that again to keep. They're very well established. They were starting to show some stress, so we're back in watering on them. And we have started planning with our neighboring townships on Movie on the Mountain. And we will be hosting the meetings on that, so they'll be coming to our meetings, and we'll be talking about what we're going to do with that and making that work. And we have calendared Wednesday, August 30th for a public meeting, during which we'll review the proposed Coble Rehabilitation Project. And we will have opportunity for public input and public review of what we're planning. We'll go through the whole proposed project of what we want to do at that park, and also have the numbers together to kind of start to demonstrate how we expect to proceed on the grant proposal for next year. So our next meeting will be at Foy Park, again on an on-site review of that park as well in July. Any questions? I'll entertain those now.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you for all the work for the for the native plant stuff. That was really an amazing event, too.
Yeah, and for those of you who were there was a lady talking about bluebirds, and during the talk, a bluebird spoke up.
Yeah.
So you couldn't have planned it any better.
We had a wild turkey on site in the morning too when we were setting up. So.
All right, that takes us to public comment. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. As we discussed earlier tonight, there are a couple items that are still on the board for our house. We're on Smith Road, 36 Smith Road, 297 Smith Road. We need clarification on a couple of items that are still on the table. As Carol was alluding to, that we are in the process of getting ready to resubmit. However, before we do resubmit, and in consultation with our land engineer, Matthew Mack, we need to get clarity on two items. One is these are off. Now, mind you, these are items that are off of our site. These aren't on our property. Okay. There's a swale in front of our neighbor's property, and based off of the conversation that has been had between Matt and Carol, it was discussed that the 12-inch swale can get reduced to a 6-inch swale, and there isn't the need to add pipe under our neighbor's driveway. So I want to understand why we have to do anything to our neighbor's property whatsoever, as that is something that is not on our property. It is something that is a capital improvement that is off of our property, as well as this swale runs, from the front of our property down to the Smith drain that runs under Smith Road there, which is about a 40-inch diameter pipe that crosses under Smith Road. Now, we do have documentation to share with you, but I wanted to just have your attention on this before we get there. In the research that we've done on this stuff around off-site improvements, there is a PA Municipalities Code, Article 5A, around capital improvements, and we have this printed out to share as well, but it says no municipality shall have the power to require as a condition for approval of land development or subdivision application the construction, dedication, or payment of any off-site improvements or capital expenditures of any nature whatsoever, to impose any contribution in lieu of extraction fees, connection, tapping of similar fees, except as may be specifically authorized under this act. So keeping that in mind, there's the issue that we have this swale that we have to put in front of our neighbor's yard. The bigger item, but actually both equally as big, and that is really concerning, is that based on our conversations with our engineer and with what was discussed with Carol, there was agreement that we didn't have to conduct a culvert analysis and we don't need to obtain a general permit. However, what's still on the table is that we have to add rock around the existing pipe that runs under Smith Road and clean out any existing vegetation and sediment so it doesn't erode the entrance of the existing pipe by concentrating the flow more into the swale. Mind you, we're reducing the water flow on our property by 50% of what it is today. And this pipe is 200 feet off of our property. So there are many contributing factors to this, that flow into this pipe that have really nothing to do with our property. Okay, there's a pond that is down in our neighbor's yard that gets runoff from the golf course that flows into the pond, and then when there's a rainstorm, it overflows and flows into that pipe. It's a 40-inch pipe. That has nothing to do with our lot. Okay? Again, as I stated, both of these issues are capital improvements off of our lot that are holding us up from getting the approval that we need. And what I'm asking here from the board, is this a standard practice of Lower Frederick to enforce potential new residents, and of course we're on less than a 1 acre lot, putting up one house, to do these capital improvements and township right-of-way improvements beyond our property lines? So that's my question. We do have some content to share, if that's okay. And this here depicts our property. We also have pictures of the pipe. We also have okay. So you'll see there we have outlined in yellow our property line. And you'll see the two areas that are in the blue boxes that we're calling out in question, which is the swale that's running. Now, this is off of our property, okay? And now we're talking about a pipe that's running under Smith Road. The second page is just the municipality code that I was just referencing there, just so that you have it. And then we get into the packet where I cover a picture of the pipe. I went out and took a picture of it just so you could see it. I have the dimensions of what it is approximately. And then when you're looking at the pictures, you'll see, if we're looking at page 2, left-hand picture, this is a view of our property from the location of the pipe, okay? Looking up at where our neighbor's driveway is, and where you see the blue truck, that's that's our property, okay? So it's really far away from our lot. And then we step back further, okay? So now we're on to, we're further down Smith Road, looking again up towards our property on the picture on the right-hand side. Where the pole is depicts where the pipe sits. And as you can see, there's a lot of existing riprap there on that in front of that property. And then page 3, we have a zoomed-in photo of the pipe under the road and another side view of the pipe. Again, just to kind of recap my ask and what I'm looking for from the Board of Supervisors tonight is this a standard practice that we have to do these types of capital improvements off of our property in order to get a permit to build a single-family house? And is this a practice that you put on your residents? Thank you.
So, this is the
Oh, sorry.
I think it's appropriate for me to answer some of what was discussed here.
And then do you have something to say too, Peter?
I can, if the board wishes.
How would you like to address this? Carol first or Peter first? What do you think?
Carol narrowly.
Yeah.
All right.
So, let's start with my perspective of the issue. So, first of all, nowhere in any letter were you asked to analyze the existing pipe that goes under Smith Road. That's a misrepresentation.
That's not.
Mr. Sims, no, let her speak.
Allow me to speak.
Okay?
So, what we have here is a vacant lot today, grass meadow, and you're proposing to build a single-family home on that lot, and then collect the water, both swales that carry water around that proposed home, and a basin with a discharge. It's going to collect all that water from the house and driveway and discharge. And what happens here, the challenge we have here is what are you discharging to? So we have two swales and a basin discharge, and the ordinance rightfully says that we need to connect to an existing swale or water course. And the nearest swale or water course is that pipe that is downstream from you. There does not exist a roadside swale today. So we've concentrated that water. We're putting it all to one point at the front corner of your property. And now we need to make sure that that water does not damage your neighbor, does not damage your neighbor, impact your neighbor in a way that he's not impacted today, and doesn't damage the road. So we are in accordance with code requesting that the water be managed down to the point of that existing waterway or culvert. Now, the discussion about erosion protection, I did not get any information from your surveyor on the invert of that culvert or the elevations immediately around it. So if there's a sudden drop right now from your neighbor's driveway down into that culvert, we need to make sure that whatever swale is implemented does not cause an erosion problem with the water that's being collected by the two swales on your property and the detention basin and discharged to this corner of the property. So that's the crux of the issue right here, as I see it. Peter, you have anything to add to that?
Yes, the MPC you're citing to doesn't apply to you. It only applies to subdivision and land development. You're building a single-family home. You're not a subdivision. You're not a land development.
Subdivided piece of land.
Yeah, but you're not subdividing it. It does not apply in this case. So, secondly, you are liable for any damage you cause when you change how water flows off your property. So it's to your benefit to ensure that you follow what the code requires. And the code requires this to ensure that you don't cause damage off your property. Because if you cause damage off your property by changing the way the water flows, you're going to get sued. So you can't just say, I'm going to concentrate the water on my property or change where it flows and let it rush onto your neighbor's property and be like, oh, I'm done with it. The law doesn't allow that.
But we're controlling the water on our lot, though.
But
That's
yes,
his point.
it doesn't,
So, yeah,
that's only half the battle. You can't then damage your neighbor's property. And that's the third issue. You know, you're focused on how we're treating you, but at the same time, the township's not gonna let some new person come in, develop a property, and basically tell our existing residents, oh, too bad if you're now getting flooded out by the new home. We have to look at the existing residents, and we have to protect their property also, which is why the ordinance is written this way, to try to ensure, one, the water is controlled off your property, and two, it doesn't affect your neighbors.
Go ahead, sir.
I'd like to have a comment. I'm Perry Hickson from Lower Pottsgrove Township. I am Blake's father. It's a lot of BS right now. I just built a house. It took me 8 months. I bought less than an acre, almost identical to my son, on an incline in Lower Pottsgrove, with Saratoga Creek not far down the road. Not one time, with all the ordinance that you're saying is wrong, was I asked to move off my property. And there's major swales from my property to Saratoga Creek. Not once. There's 2 box culverts. Wasn't asked once. Why is this township asking for work done off the property? Carol, you just stated, where's the water gonna go? I ask everybody in this room with common sense, without 50% of the water not leaving, where's the water going now? The water's not coming from his lot. The water's coming from Limerick, Perkiomen, down the road. Everybody knows it. I was at this property, we got a video of this property on a 4-inch rain, no water was leaving this property. All of a sudden, we got to build swales. We tried to get a permit to have PennDOT do an analysis on the 40-inch pipe. If he didn't stand up and fight that, he might have to be getting that right now. Where does it stop? It's common sense. $20,000 it cost me to put a stormwater management plan together on my lot, $7,000 of engineering, $27,000. He's approaching 60, and we're still standing here trying to figure out what to do down the road. Common sense. And as for this, there's some lawyers that would debate that and a judge.
Go right ahead.
Well, that's professional.
That's really professional.
Well,
That's
Yeah,
professional.
That's really
You,
great.
you come
You know-
here and you tell me I'm wrong, I get to fight back.
Oh, that's fine.
Well,
Hopefully it doesn't go to a judge.
And frankly, you're making it personal, and this isn't to be personal. This is just so we can build. I mean, all we are trying to do is build our house. Listen, we have agreed to a lot of things, okay? We've gone through a lot of hurdles to get to this. Had we known that this off-site stuff would have been an issue back in January, Peter, we may not even be here today, because I would never have requested for the variance. This was a new finding that was added after we got the variance.
That's not correct, that was in my first letter.
Sorry, to be clear, the swale was, but you never mentioned once in the first letter the 40-inch pipe. That was
I've
not.
never asked you to analyze the 40-inch pipe, I asked you to get the water to the 40-inch pipe. I have never asked you to analyze the 40-inch
So,
pipe.
yeah, if we go to your page 3 of adequate erosion protection shall be provided along open channels.
Is this the May 10th letter?
This is the May 10th letter, and you talk about the invert and dimensions of existing culvert is not indicated. It's unclear how the flow is connected to the culvert entrance, if any drop, exactly what you're just saying. And if there's any interaction with waterway, they may require application for general permit to comply with state regulations.
So this is talking about the water from the swale, which I was talking about earlier tonight, how the water from the swale gets to the pipe, because I had no information on your engineer about the topography of the ground around that pipe. So I'm not asking you to analyze the pipe, I'm not asking you to analyze flow through the pipe. This is all about how the water is getting to the pipe, and I didn't have that detail from your engineer.
So I want to be clear, because I want to, and please, I mean, honestly, we just want to come to a conclusion, you know, and again, I'm not making this, believe me, I'm not making this a personal issue. I'm not, okay? We just are trying to build our house, and we just continue to get, the yeah buts, and we continue to get our field goals, you know, continue to get pushed on us here. So all we want to is come to a conclusion, okay? If it has to come to it that we have to do, and we're, you know, being forced by the township here to add this 6-inch swale in front of our neighbor's yard, okay? But I have to say that if we have to do anything to that pipe that is a public right-of-way, okay, it's township property. We should not be responsible for doing anything to that pipe. We shouldn't be touching it. It's not our responsibility. There's other impacts that have also impact that pipe that have nothing to do with us. So that, in my opinion, we're drawing a hard line on us having to do any type of construction around that pipe.
So again, you're not being asked to do anything to the pipe. You're being asked to make sure the water is conveyed from your property to that pipe in a way that doesn't damage your neighbor and doesn't cause erosion.
So if we can have this clearly denoted in plain English, okay, I think that would really help us get through the issue that we're having right now, which, you know, to me, based off of my conversation with my engineer, Matt, you know, we talked about the 6-inch swale running down our neighbor's property. Okay, I mean, if I saw someone coming up with a backhoe, I'd be questioning what the heck's going on. But, you know, if that's the case, then that's the case. However, and if I go to my email response from Matt, just so we're all clear. So I asked for clarification, okay? The pipe under Smith Road, so where you guys landed, we don't need to do the pipe analysis, we don't need to obtain the general permit, but it was requested that rock is added around the pipe. So what he denoted in his response, and if this is not right, Carol, I do want this rectified and cleared up, because we are, you know, going to resubmit our plans, and there's maybe some stuff in here that may not be right. It says, it appears by the pictures that there's already riprap around the swale and existing flat, so we may have to add additional stone around it and clean out some sediment. So I want to be clear,
None of
that's
that
not,
was discussed.
that is not on the table.
None of that was discussed. Again, I'll say it again, the point is to get the water that's leaving the corner of your property to the pipe without adverse impact to your neighbor, without erosion.
So, okay, and if that's the case, then that's fine. It was, when we were reading what was sent to us, and when Matt and I were interpreting, what we were all interpreting from the township this was some capital improvements that we were going to be on the hook for doing, and that's where we were like, wait a second, like this isn't making sense, hence why we came here tonight to kind of get this clarity, to ensure that we're not making capital improvements to your roadway on that pipe, okay? If we have to add the 6-inch swale.
Never asked for any improvements to the pipe. When I spoke to your engineer, it seemed to me that he understood that. I don't know where the lack of communication is. But again, the water's got to get, the water that is discharged from your property needs to get safely to the pipe.
Understood. Like I said, we'll do it, right? We're not gonna, you know, put our feet down and stop. Where we were going with this was around the pipe, and if it's confusion on us, then, you know, egg on my face, but it was unclear to me about what was necessary for whatever it was that you and Matt were discussing about the pipe that runs under Smith Road. That was unclear to us, because it sounded like we had to add rock or something to help prevent further erosion.
If there's a severe drop from your swale down to the pipe, then he may need to propose some rock in the swale that you're creating to keep
Right.
it from eroding.
So,
I don't know if that's the case, because I don't know the topography of that area from here.
but I guess, you know, this is where we're running into the problem, right? Is, you know, why do we need to add the rock? Because honestly, we don't want to damage, do
We
anything
need to do
further.
something that does not cause erosion from your property to that culvert. So if there's a nice gentle swale and then the last foot or two drops hard, and it's going to cause erosion, then right where that swale is, I don't know, he might need some rock, I don't know, because I haven't seen a design from him, I haven't seen the topography in the area.
So my last point around this then is, if we are then having to add this rock, you know, long-term maintenance of this, I don't think it's on us to have to own this as part of our O&M agreement.
No.
Okay. Then I think that helps answer our questions that we have. But I do have to appeal to the Board of Supervisors just on this fact around this, is that, you know, it shouldn't be on a resident, you know, for whether it's for this purpose or other purposes, to have to or be forced to have to do these, types of capital improvements on their lot, well, especially when this is outside of it, okay? So again, we've been very compliant. If this is where we have to go to get this done, to get it done, then so be it.
My last comment, I just did it in the last 8 months with a creek right down the road. Wasn't asked one thing off my property, not one. What's this township different in ordinance and codes and laws? I don't know.
Thank
I
you,
just did
thank
it.
you.
That's
Thank
all I
you.
got.
Yeah.
But every piece of property is unique and has unique solutions. So, thank you both for attending. Do we have any other public comment? All right. Do we have any supervisor comment?
Sure.
You do? Go ahead.
Yep, I have one. So back in April, we were able to honor one of our residents, Travis Ryder, who was involved in a shooting and lost a lot of blood in the process. As we mentioned during that ceremony, we will have a blood drive. It's confirmed for August 8th. We'll be here from 1 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Don't have any sign-up sheets yet or any information. We will need some volunteers to help check people in and show people where to go, and we'll definitely need volunteers to roll up their sleeves. So more information to come. I will ask the township to use resources for advertising and obviously the building at a later date, but soon. So I just wanted to get that out there, mark your calendars. I think it's a Tuesday, August 8th. You can check your calendars. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, you have something?
Sure.
What?
Always.
All right.
So I just want to thank the members of the Planning Commission, John, our planner, Carol, for getting the ideas and the application together for the Montco 2040 grant. I'm excited that this is going to become a reality. Second comment, I know Mr. Schmidt left, but I did some more research. So basically, if you want to change a polling place, we, the board, really don't have anything to do with that process. It really, what you need to do is get a petition by people who actually vote at the polling place and present that to the Board of Elections. We could certainly pass a resolution supporting that. So right now, Lower Frederick 2 actually votes in Lower Frederick 1, which is an exception that has already been made by the board, the voting board. By law, precincts should have no more than 1,200 registered voters. Lower Frederick 1 exceeds that by a certain, not much, but maybe 100 votes. But Lower Frederick 2 is about 2 times the limit. So if we start to change things, God knows what the board may do or decide to do. We may end up with 3 districts and 3 precincts. I don't know. And lastly, it would occur to me that you might need to have, if people want to actually change things, you might need to have a petition at the firehouse and then a petition here, because now this voting district says, hey, we want to go vote over at the school and not here. So it is a little bit of a Jenga pile to do all these things. But, I'll be happy to talk to Ernie about it too. But the point is, it doesn't really fall on the board to initiate this thing. And I think Ernie seemed to think that it did, so.
All right. Anyone else? No? All right, thanks, everyone. Meeting's adjourned. Travel safely.
Look at that, it's only 10 o'clock.
Recording stopped.
Thank you. I haven't even looked at it yet.
So quick question.